Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1183 of the War News Stream. And today we have massive news from everywhere around the world. Today we've seen Moscow attacked by Ukrainian drones yet again. Also, a North Korean ship capsized during launch, literally sunk. And also, Poland intercepted a Russian sabotage ship today and ran it right back into Russian waters. Massive news literally everywhere, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world as our boy in North Korea, the little fat man, as we call him, Rocket Man, some people call him, has suffered a serious hit to his ego today, as we were able to hear that a brand new Chokyun destroyer that was just being launched today off the spillway capsized right in the water right after being launched literally just an hour ago. It just happened. It is actually something that we can confirm because Korean state media in North Korea has actually reported the incident did happen, and Kim Jung Un has called it a crime of the highest order. We have been able to hear that news, that amazing, incredible news, on top of additional news coming out of the Russian Federation today, where we have been able to see that Ukrainian armed forces have conducted significant drone attacks, leaving a path and wave of destruction all the way from the Oriol Oblast up to the city of Moscow itself, forcing the Russian Federation to close the Moscow city airspace for around 12 hours at this point, and it has not opened since it was closed around the midday today. We have also been able to hear that the Polish have run away a Russian spy ship. They went out there and they said something like "Kurva," and then it ran away. So we were able to hear that that did happen. We also were able to hear that the French are sending a surveillance ship into the Baltic to keep an eye on these Shadow Fleet vessels, the tankers of the Shadow Fleet for the large part. We have also been able to hear in some additional news that the U.S. is going to be conducting more talks with the Iranians, a 5th round of talks, because everyone knows that the old saying isn't third time is the charm. It's actually the quadrillionth time is the charm, and we're just working on our way to the quadrillionth one. So we're going to be getting into another round of talks with Iran in Rome here for the 5th round of talks, and we're also going to be having a bit of an interesting time in Israel, as we were able to see that the Palestinian Jihad Front fired a missile at the Israelis from the Hamas Strip, which was intercepted by the Israelis over the city of Ashkelon, just north of the Gaza Strip. We have also been able to hear that the Iranians have seen that a strange occurrence has happened in the area of the Strait of Hormuz pretty much right in time the day after a Panamanian-flagged vessel apparently was seized by Iranian authorities, and this is all coming at the exact same time as the Chinese have issued a warning to the United States that they either stop development on the Golden Dome system, which is an orbital missile defense system, or the Chinese will consider that a weaponization of space and a violation of the Outer Space Treaty, and will lead to a space-based arm race between the United States and the People's Republic of China. Not only that, but the Ukrainian armed forces on the front line of Ukraine today have continued their offensives inside of Belgorod and Kursk, and we've also been able to hear that apparently the Russians are going to be beginning a new offense in Kharkiv. We have also been able to hear additional news as well that the Russian Federation has been suffering significant setbacks inside the Ukrainian front lines in Donetsk and Luhansk as they attempt to make offensives, but nevertheless, the Ukrainians offend them in return, stopping their advances and stymieing any kind of progress that the Russian Federation's armed forces could ever hope to achieve. A really sad day for Russia, and that's at the exact same time as Lavrov said that the Russians aren't even considering a ceasefire because they don't think peace is a real option with the West, those wicked damned Americans. But nevertheless, we were able to hear a load of news today, a lot of it, as a matter of fact, and of course I wanted to get y'all into what is actually truly breaking news. I want to get y'all on over. I'm sure some of y'all can hear the smile through the microphone. And I gotta tell y'all, when I hear of an enemy of the Republic suffering an unfortunate fate, it always brings a joyous smile to my face, because you never get to see it in this kind of a way, where a country gets its just desserts and we didn't even have to do anything but watch them drown in their own stupidity and incompetence, like happened today at the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And today, the sun didn't shine on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Sunlight is banned in North Korea by law, but beyond that, they did go out to the harbor near to Ham Hung, and it appears that the ham was hung. Like, we can confirm that for sure, because the North Koreans today, just an hour ago, were launching their newest warship, one of the most advanced that the Korean People's Navy has ever seen. It's in fact the most advanced warship in the world, according to North Korea, and has put the wicked American imperialist dogs in fear of what the North Korean Navy can do. And this is the vessel that's going to do it, the Chohyun class destroyer. It is not really a destroyer, it's more a corvette by tonnage. But that ain't stopping the North Koreans from, lying about the size. As everyone knows, if it's about 80 feet long, it's really 120. If it's, if it's 3, it's 6. We all know the gist here. But beyond that, it does appear that this little North Korean warship right here has had a bit of an issue. This is the Chohyun destroyer. This is the actual one that currently is in service. But there was a second one that they have been constructing for some time. And there was one that they were going to be putting into service. They were going to be putting into service today. And it was the second sister ship of the Chohyun class. Now, what is funny about that is that apparently, according to the initial reports that we got an hour ago, we heard that apparently during the launch, which, by the way, I do have to point out to everyone, was actually attended by Kim Jung Un, so he was there when this happened. A serious accident had been reported at the ceremony to launch a new destroyer in North Korea just today. The warship was said to be severely damaged, and as a result, Kim Jung Un has called the incident a criminal act that cannot be tolerated.
Oh now, my God, he said a criminal act. He's not going to tolerate this heresy. This incompetence is criminal.
Let us read what is classified as a criminal act that cannot be tolerated. The communication said about this accident, due to immature command and operational negligence, the parallel movement of the bogies could not be guaranteed, resulting in the launching sled in the stern detaching first and causing the ship to capsize, and the ship's balance was destroyed due to a rupture in the hull in some sections, and the bow section was unable to detach from the keel, pretty much meaning the vessel has flipped over in the middle of the launch that was being attended by Kim Jong Un at that very moment, and it capsized and sank right in front of them. You can't make this stuff up. It's never happened before. It will never happen again. The newest ship in their navy, this one right here, the Chohyun class, just sank right in front of the fat guy, and he didn't even have to sit on it to sink it. It just did it on its own. So we're hearing right now that there is a hailstorm, a firestorm actually, that's going on in North Korea. The North Korean government is outraged by this. They're so outraged that there has been official public statements by Kim Jung Un and the Korean state media letting us know that this incident 100% occurred, because that right there is actually in the quotations the official statement by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea on Korean state media. This actually happened. We might be able to get satellite footage and pictures tomorrow, hopefully, of the actual wreck of the vessel sitting rolled over on its side in port right off the spillway, because it's completely gone. The hull's been punctured, the watertight compartments have filled with water, meaning that it's probably down by the stern. We even have been getting some reports that it appears that it actually rolled over onto its side, and it appears that the superstructure may have also taken some significant damage. This vessel is pretty much already a complete loss. This is the funniest thing that's happened in news in a very long time, but I have to make sure to get y'all our second corroboration here, because about 20 minutes later, we were able to hear once again the same statement from the Korean state media, letting us know that the vessel did capsize. So, with this in mind, this is going to be a great one. Kim Jung Un has demanded, I want to put this out there for y'all, that the people who were involved in this criminal act be punished. So we already know that there's going to be heads rolling, quite literally, and executions coming soon. Most likely, like the head directors of the shipyard. Some of the people might be put into political labor camps. You know, it's going to be a whole shebang for everyone who was involved. But the other thing is that's even funnier is that there is a Workers' Party of Korea conference that's coming up in mid-June, and Kim Jung Un leaving this event today, according to what Korean state media has said, they demanded that the vessel be righted and ready for service by mid-June. That is the biggest joke of the day, because it's only 3 weeks away. There's no way to right the vessel, get the punctures in the hull fixed, and also fix all of the advanced computer systems on board that have now been short-circuited from their exposure to salt water, and also will be suffering from severe corrosion. Even if they didn't get short-circuited, they're not going to be able to do that by mid-June. So he's pretty much lining up whoever's going to be assigned to this project to be executed sometime in late June, because nobody is going to be able to fix this ship in that short of a period of time. This will actually take months. So it is going to be...
I think he's just saying that to save face, because I think once the ship's capsized, it's pretty much like wrecked and finished at that point. Maybe it can be saved, possibly, but not that quickly. Like, there's no way. He might just be doing that to save face, and then later he's going to say, oh, it's irreparable. They need to die now.
Probably so. It's just an absolutely insane thing. It's honestly comical how this went. And also, by the way, folks, I gotta add in, this is the most advanced ship by far that the North Koreans have access to in the Korean People's Navy. Symbol right here. Also, let me go show y'all what the Korean People's Navy actually has, because I bet y'all don't really know, and I really don't know a lot about the exact makeup of the Korean People's Navy right now. I know that they have some smaller corvettes, but their Navy isn't exactly known to be a sizable one, or even a significant one. So let's go look at the list of active ships. So of course they have the old submarines like the Foxtrot classes and such, not really anything great. We can also see this Sang-O class, which really did sang a song when it sank to the bottom of the sea. That thing looks like it's an ancient relic from a bygone era, but nevertheless, these are the only destroyers that they have. Like, these are the only ones. Is the Chohyun class, the one that's currently sitting capsized in the middle of the spillway. So those are the only two. Everything else that they have, like this is actually the largest ship in the Korean People's Navy that isn't a Chohyun class. That's actually the most advanced in terms of firepower that they have right now.
That thing's like a garbage scow. It's like a rust bucket. That thing looks like it's from, like, what, the 1900s or something.
Like the 1950s, maybe. And it's a Na-Jin class. They have only one. Wait, hold up. Actually, no. They have two. 531 and 631. But this thing... We don't even have a good modern picture of it. This picture was taken in 1993, and this thing was put into service It was built this, by the way, folks, just to give you all an idea of how bad off North Korea is. This ship in most countries would probably take a year, maybe a year and a half to build. In North Korea, it took them a solid 7 years to build it, from 1971 to 1979, but it was put into commission in the middle of construction in 1973. So I don't really know what was up. I guess they were using it as like a sitting air defense artillery battery. I don't know, because it was commissioned in the middle of being built. So a little bit odd with that one, but still, here's another shocking vessel, the Saryuan class that we have right here. This is another shining example of the Korean People's Navy's firepower at sea. They're using the damn turret of a PT-76, which let me go pull this up. I can't make this stuff up. They're using the turret from this vehicle as the main gun on this ship. It's probably at best a glorified yacht, like you would see on the Great Lakes. I've never seen anything like this. This is pitiful. This is one of the biggest ships that they have. That's it. And on the back, they have what appears to be 2 Soviet-made quad 14.7 millimeter machine gun mounts for anti-aircraft defense, and maybe some anti-submarine countermeasures. Maybe. But that's all they have on this vessel. That's it. This is one of the best vessels in the North Korean Navy, by the way, outside of the Chohyun class, which I'll show y'all again right here. So, considering that they've gone from, Geschwindigkeit in a Deutschen Boat kind of technology to this is actually a big step forward. But the fact that they just lost the second one, literally before it even really hit the water, it touched the water and then literally died. This is not going well for North Korea right now, and this is going to go down in the pages of history as being one of the most comical incidents that has ever happened for a dictatorial regime in the 21st century, without a doubt at this point. But beyond that, we have a question for everyone, because all of us know that whenever anything goes wrong in the sunshine-bound land of the sun-faced leader Kim Jung Un, a great and respectable leader of the Workers' Party of Korea and admired by the people from the hills of Sungmun-ri all the way down to Pyongyang and the hills of Hamhong itself, we all know that in a country like that, when something goes wrong, folks gonna die, and we gotta ask, how many of them are gonna be executed? This sounds a little bit morbid, but the reality is that that's just the fact of life over here, and we all know that the clowns gotta try and save face. So, what is gonna be happening here after North Korea launched their new naval destroyer, which fell over and capsized? Will Kim Jung Un get revenge? Boo, I don't know why he's getting revenge, but he's already made it clear he's gonna be getting it. Everyone, this almost looks like a North Korean election with how many people voted for the first result, said yes, Kim will execute many people. Some are saying Kim will forgive and let them live. And when I say some, I mean like 3 people. So another 3 people are saying they're unsure and undecided. And a few are also saying Kim will wait a while first, and then the heads will start rolling and people will be going to prison camps. But beyond that, Matthew, what are people thinking about this? Are they thinking that the gulag is in these people's future, or the chopping block?
So, in one of the most unanimous polls of all time, 89%, or actually 90% now, said yes, Kim will execute many people over this failure for the regime, while 5% said Kim will wait a while first and let the temperature die down a bit, and 3% said no, Kim will forgive and let live. And I think that's the least thing that Kim's going to be doing right now. He's already called this a criminal act, and he's going for people's heads at this point. He's already made that very clear. And I wouldn't be surprised to see these as televised executions coming up very shortly. And honestly, I feel bad for the dock workers and the boat workers. I'm sure they didn't intentionally do this because, of course, they wouldn't intentionally sink the vessel knowing it's going to cost their life. So someone made a grave mistake. A lot of people probably made grave mistakes, and they're going to be paying dearly for it. Once again, Kim Jung Un missiled his own uncle in the square. So if he's willing to do that to his own uncle, I think these people right here are about to be in for it. So I'm with the 90%. It's about to get ugly, and you might be able to see it on TV, unfortunately. It's going to be that bad. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to say I'm with the 90%. That is a crazy result right there, Matthew, on a poll like this. Usually it's like 70-something, maybe at the highest. 90% sounds like we're almost running an election like Kim Jung Un runs for his presidential bid in North Korea, or Putin, better yet, in Russia. But nevertheless, I would have to agree with the 90%. While we are laughing and joking about the whole thing that happened because it's a huge embarrassment to the North Korean government, the unfortunate reality is that there's going to be a lot of people who really didn't have any control over this that are most likely going to be executed, and a even larger number are most likely going to end up in the gulags in North Korea, and immediately, pretty much everyone involved, even if they don't get executed, is immediately being lowered to hostile class without a doubt, which is a very unfortunate thing. But such is life inside of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, because it's not democratic and neither is it a republic. It's just Korea and it's run by a dictator. So you keep that in mind when we're talking about this, because this is something that is a significant embarrassment. Kim Jung Un himself personally showed up to watch the launching of this vessel, and it failed on the spillway. I don't even know how in the hell they punctured the hull. Like, I don't know how that happens, because spillways are... Let me go pull up a spillway for everyone real quick. Let's see here. Let's see. Ship, spillway. Let me go pull that up. So let me go show you all a spillway here real quick, because it's a little important that we actually, get that up here real quick. So, ship spillway, or let's see here. Dang, well, like, they're not pulling up a spillway. They're pulling up spillways for dams, not for, vessels being launched. Ship.
Also, by the way, Steve said, "Is there a vid of it?" No, there's no video whatsoever of this the disaster in the making. They've been hiding this footage like crazy all day long. They have refused to let any of the footage out, and they're going to keep it that way because I'm sure, like we've been saying, the damage is probably much more severe than we think, and they're trying to keep that secret until at least June when they have to announce that it's really bad.
So let me show you all some different kinds of spillway launches or ship launches. Here is one right here. This is a fairly old one, but there is a chance that the North Koreans may have launched their vessel this way. Back in the day, it was pretty common for vessels to be launched by the stern, going in the water first. Nowadays, it's a little bit more common for ships to be launched this way, where they're launched horizontally, perpendicular to the waterfront, instead of having the stern sliding in first. I don't know which way they launched it, but considering that something locked up and it went into the water in a bad way, I don't really know how it happened. I think they may have been trying to launch it sideways to the water, like we're seeing here, and some of the spillway ramps locked up, and then it went pretty much head or stern first in, slammed into the water below, and then capsized right there. And most likely the weight of the spillway, the weight on the front of the vessel just pulled the rest of it in, and so now it's sitting on its side, possibly in this port, just completely destroyed for the large part. I'm sure that the superstructure has taken significant damage because it's not supposed to support any kind of weight on its sides. I would also bet that the engine room and the machinery spaces are also completely destroyed and waterlogged with salt water, so pretty much completely destroyed. Any computer systems that are currently submerged are completely destroyed and will require a complete refit. The hull will have to be repaired. There is a lot that will have to be done to this vessel, the Chohyon, to get it back up and running. I'm thinking it was launched this way, but once again, we don't have any video or picture evidence of this happening. We just have official Korean state media reports, which... if we're going to believe the Korean state media on anything, we're going to believe them on this, because why in the world would they say that one of their own ships went in a bad way on a launch? They would not do that unless it was so bad they can't even ignore it. So this is like the North Korean version of Chernobyl for them, because this is like the biggest thing that's happened in the country for the last 30 years, I believe. That was a bad thing.
I'm not sure if this has ever happened really before, because I was looking it up here to see if I could find images of a similar situation. I'm only seeing one on the entire internet. It looks like a yacht was being launched, a consumer yacht, and it somehow flipped over and capsized when it got launched. But I've never seen a military vessel get launched like that and then flip over, capsize, and start sinking. That's unheard of, actually. I've never really heard of it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either. It's really just an insane kind of an event. Like, this is historically something I've never heard of, really. Like, I've heard of some launches, like the launch of the hull of the Queen Mary, that actually flooded an entire area because of the displacement that it had, but I've never heard of a launch just failing this badly where something like that happened. This is just wild. But beyond that, though, it is quite clear that there's going to be nothing but bad things coming out of this, because this is a significant embarrassment to the Korean government. And not only that, this vessel is probably already going to end up being a near total loss already at this point, because the amount of refit alone that it will take to get this ship back in operation will probably take a good year or more to be able to refit it well enough that it'll be operational. Or they could just try and rush it into service and none of the weapon systems on board work, and the engine room and the machinery spaces are still, corroding because of their exposure to salt water, but they could technically get it running and then try and fix all the issues later. That is also a high likelihood as well, but still an absolutely crazy occurrence. It happened right before we went on air, so we had to come on air with that as the main story, because this is Comedy Central now. Like, North Korea has taken Comedy Central off air and replaced them with North Korea, because I've never heard of anything like this happening before, and it's a complete national embarrassment. But anyways, moving on from that and out of North Korea, because that's all the comedy that we can have for the night. I mean, that's about all that there can be for it. We are going to be moving on into the massive big news that we did get today from everywhere else, because we still had a large amount of news from really everywhere, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and even China today, on multiple different fronts, on multiple different other news stories. So I want to make sure that we get to all of those as well. But moving on from that and on into Europe, and into the Russian Federation, we have been able to hear that Ukraine has been pummeling Moscow with significant drone attacks over the past few hours, and we've also been able to see that significant damage has been caused pretty much in a path of destruction from the Ukrainian border all the way up to Moscow itself. We were able to hear earlier in the day that the entirety of the southern Moscow airspace has been closed, as the Zhukovsky and Domodedovo international airports on the southern side of Moscow, close to the area of Lyubertsy, have all been shut down as a result of these large Ukrainian drone attacks that were ongoing. We were able to see video and picture evidence of these drone attacks in the area. This clip right here actually comes from some area of southern Moscow, but the second clip we were able to confirm later actually came from the area of the region of the Oryol Oblast near Bolkov. So this picture is not from Moscow, that picture is from Bolkov in the Oryol Oblast, but we were able to see a video of the incoming Ukrainian drones in Moscow here in this clip.
Это там что-то. Завод, звук завода, либо теплицы бьют. Ой, блядь. Там видно что-нибудь?
We see them just chit-chatting. They're like, where are the dogs barking?
По церкви.
I don't know why in the world she got into the microphone like it was an ASMR. She's like, the drones are here. It's like, why did she do that? Like, I don't know.
Летит, сейчас взрыв будет.
Because it's scary, блядь. It's so scary. Whoa.
Whoa! Oh.
Летит.
Oh, do y'all hear that?
Вот он.
I hear it. It's a lawnmower of death.
К нам, пожалуйста.
Oh my god! There it is!
Oh my god. There it is.
Это не
It's the Cub Cadet. He spun the corner.
Сейчас взрыв будет где-то.
And off it goes into the distance.
Какой-то 8-й.
Oh, it might have hit something or it might have got shot down. I really can't tell. Oh! Oh! This woman was very animated. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next bit of news from Moscow, we also were able to see more of the drone attacks from these clips. Take a gander at these.
Валом у нас не взорвали.
Ну все уже, как бы, уже пролетел.
There it goes. This one gets shot
Well,
down.
that bird was almost better air defense than the Russians' like AA guns on the ground. I almost took it out.
Dude, that bird said, I will defeat Narodna for Comrade Stalin, and then tried to take out the drone. It missed.
Look, it missed it just barely.
Barely. But here comes the anti-air missile, which isn't going to miss.
Пидорасы, блядь.
Пидорасы, блядь. Bam, and it hit the
попал,
drone.
да.
This drone was confirmed to be shot down by Russian air
Бля,
defense.
нихуя себе.
Oh, look, and MASH, which I guess is what the Ukrainians did to most of Russia today. But anyways, here's another clip showing the air defense hitting the drone and taking it down. It's kind of loud.
Твою ж дивись,
Yup, твою мать!
падает.
I like how the Russians say one word at a time, like they're just learning their own language. They'll be like, yup, bemat. It's like, bro, what are they doing?
Пиздец.
And there he went with another one, so he
Yeah.
learned another word. Пиздец, блядь. But moving on from that and out of those clips, it appears that Moscow was not having a good day, but they weren't the only ones to be having a bad day in Russia, because pretty much an entire path all the way from Moscow was created by the Ukrainian drones on the way up, and they were hitting anything that was of note or value all the way up towards Moscow. And we were able to see that this first started in the city of Bolkov, in the Oryol Oblast. Oh, the magical Oryol Oblast, where the nice white and black cookies come from. But you know something else that comes from the great, beautiful Oryol Oblast is this great semiconductor factory in Bolkov, which we can see right about here. This is, believe it or not, folks, a semiconductor factory. I don't know, like, how it works. It's hardly a facility, but I think I can drop y'all down. I can't drop y'all down on the street, actually. I was thinking I could. I was a little bit caught up in my hubris there. Apparently, you're not allowed to be around the great semiconductor factory. But beyond that, this is one of the few in Russia Like I was saying a while ago, folks, many moons ago, the Russian Federation doesn't really have a semiconductor production industry. Most semiconductors are sourced from Taiwan, the United States, or China. And considering that it's really hard to get any market access in those countries anymore to get a lot of them, they have had to really rely heavily on producing weapons that use their own semiconductors, like the ones produced in this warehouse here in the middle of this town of Belgorod. But one thing that is really interesting about that, wildly interesting about that, is that the Ukrainians blew it up today in a drone attack. And we were able to see the semiconductor got hit. There's the fires from the semiconductor factory. There is the geolocation of it. And there's the firm satellite as well, confirming that a fire had broken out across the entirety of the facility, and it was burning to the ground. One of the few semiconductor factories in Russia, mind you, is that one, and it got blown away. But moving on from this clip, because this is a duplicate actually from the Moscow area, so I'm going to be deleting that. It does appear that the city of Belgorod has taken a significant hit, as they did end up losing one of the few semiconductor factories in the whole of Russia. But that's not the only thing that came under attack during the Moscow attack. The city of Tula as a whole also came under attack as well. And the city of Tula is quite famous because on this little island sort of a deal right here is the Tula Firearms Factory. Actually, it's this island right here. This is the Tula Firearms Factory, which still produces guns and ammunition to this day. This munitions facility and rifle, well, not really a rifle these days, but more so of a weapons manufactory of a sense, has been in operation really since about the late 1700s, and in the same spot to this very day. And a lot of these buildings are actually old enough that they could date all the way back to the original inception of this factory. But nevertheless, in the city of Tula, we were able to confirm that they were also coming under attack as well. We're not really sure if the attack was aiming for the Tula munitions factory, but we can see that there was an ongoing air attack in the area, and we also got some really good clips of the attack as well. Who wants to see some clips of an air attack on the Tula? Me! Alright, well, since I asked, we're gonna watch them. Oh,
damn. Big hit.
Business, we can also see this as well. Oh, look, an air defense missile. Oh! All the car alarms are going off. Quick, everyone, check your copper wiring. But we also got to see here the fires that were created in Tula from the attacks. And someone just casually driving by, cruising down the street in my 8-4.
That guy's super suspicious. It's like, what are you doing is driving right by the disaster zone that slow? It's like a gangster after he just set an arson.
Bro, like every Russian has an arson this deep inside of him. He saw like the glow of a fire around the corner. He's like, I have this weird feeling. I have to get in the car. I have to slow down and look at the fire. It's like, dude, the Russians, they'll sit there and walk up to a fire, like the fire department will, and the police will. And they'll be like, was this an arson? And they look back, and there's like 1,000 people back there like moths going, wow, fire. And they're like, this would be impossible to find one. They're all arsonists. It's like, what the hell's the point? But anyways, we were able to confirm that not only did the great, beautiful city of Belgorod came under attack, but also the city of Tula and also Moscow. And this is all at the exact same time as the Russians are doubling down. We were able to hear Lavrov today make a great statement that they aren't looking for a ceasefire at all. Here's the direct quote that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said today about renewed calls for a ceasefire. He says, that's why now, when they tell us, let's have a truce and then we'll see. No, guys, we've already been in these situations. We don't want that anymore. Pretty much making it clear that Russia is not looking for a ceasefire. So, we just keep getting run in circles. But if you don't believe me, here's him saying it in Russian. So if you can understand Russian, here it is.
Сейчас, когда нам говорят, вот давайте перемирие.
Let me translate for y'all. Right now in Russian, he's saying, yeah, some things like that.
Seattle slew.
А там посмотрим. Нет, ребята, мы уже были в этих историях. Мы так больше не хотим. И Макроны.
Also, let me add in a couple of things. That's another one that he's saying right there.
Стармеры, фон дер Ляйены и прочие деятели.
He said he needs his bridle and a salt block. I don't really know what he means by that.
Европы, которые сейчас истерично требуют от Соединенных Штатов присоединиться к антироссийским действиям, и нарастить количество санкций, это просто их выдает с головы.
And at the end, he said something about loving the thrill of the run or something like that. You know, a whole bunch of equestrian talk because he is a horse after all. But nevertheless, it does appear that the Russians are making it quite clear they don't really want to talk, which is something that we've known for a while, but it looks like we're having to rediscover that every week. So, hey, you know, no point in not stopping what happened in the past from happening again in the present. You know, they always say the whole point in learning history was that way we could make the same mistakes again, but act like they're cool this time. But moving on from that, and on out into some other news that actually affects the Russians a little bit directly so, we were able to see that the Russians are doing so badly, some of their modern military equipment is actually starting to become museum pieces already. But hey, before we get into that, we got a question for all of y'all, and it seems as though Ukraine launched a new major drone attack across Russia, including Moscow. And what is the new strategy? And it seems as though many are people saying it's smaller but more frequent attacks. Others are saying it's very large and infrequent attacks. Some people say it seems to be totally random, and some are saying that they're unsure and undecided. But Matthew, does everyone have some input? And I know you have some input as well. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so about 50% of the audience said Ukraine's new strategy for the drone attacks is smaller but more frequent attacks, while 23% said very large and infrequent attacks, and 12% said it seems to be completely random whenever Ukraine wants to do it. And generally, I'm actually not with the majority on this one. I'm actually with the 23%. It seems to be the attacks are becoming a lot less frequent than they used to be, but the attacks, when they do happen, are very large. They attack multiple different regions of Russia, and most times they also attack Moscow, and they end up taking several places out like the semiconductor factory. So it's actually not very frequent, in my opinion, anymore. It's a lot less frequent, but massive attacks. But I'm with the 23%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I'll agree with the 23% as well. It appears that they are less frequent but larger attacks, as the attacks are encompassing wide swaths of Russia at a single time each, and appear to be encompassing a great deal of drones, in the dozens, maybe even over 100 each time. So I would have to agree with the small minority as well, the 23% that said it seems to be more, well, actually, I'd have to say I'm with the 23%, of very large and infrequent attacks, because that seems to be the running trend. But while we're speaking of running trends, many of y'all know that there has been a running trend, at least in the analysis and reporting here on this channel, that the Russians are running out of equipment. And that is something that a lot of people try and contest. Yes, all of the Russian bases throughout the Federation that house their military equipment are, of course, dwindling in supplies, and some of them are completely empty. But some people say, alas, Enforcer, you are nothing but lies, because the Russians have an endless stream of equipment. And sure, they might be running out of tanks, and sure, they might be running out of APCs, but they got more. They've got more of everything. They can just pump them out of the mills and the factories and just keep the war going. Well, you would think that until you saw what happened today in Sierzan, near to Samara, in the Samara Oblast. Because in the city of Sierzan today, there was an interesting addition to the military museum of a Ka-52. These are brand new, actually, at least in terms of Russian military tech. They've hardly even been in the military or serving in the Russian armed forces. But you know what's interesting about it? Is that this thing took so much damage, and the Russians have such a little ability to keep the remaining Ka-52s flying, that because this thing was minorly damaged, they stripped it for all of its usable parts to keep the other Ka-52s running, and they took the shell of it, the fuselage, and went and put it in this museum. That is how badly they're running out of resources at this point, is that if a Ka-52 is slightly damaged at that point, they're putting it down like Lavrov, and then they're taking all the spare parts that they can to keep the other ones running, and then throwing the other one, the remaining Hulk, in a museum. And it's crazy to see. I never thought we would see, in this day and age yet, a Ka-52 at a military museum. I said it would be the day that pigs fly, and Kim Jung Un was on a transport aircraft the other day, so I guess that qualifies, because they're now putting Ka-52s into the military museums, because they're running out of spare parts, so they're cannibalizing some of them, and then turning them into museum props. Which is, also, are those tank traps out there?
Yeah, it looks like those dragon's teeth.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little wild right there. Yeah. Oh, also, why are they hiding along the wall like they're about to get shot over here watching it? Like they don't trust.
I think they're actually guiding it. Actually, it looks like they're holding ropes to it, trying to guide it onto that post.
Oh yeah, they are actually. Yeah, you're right. But let's see here. And then we got another picture of the crane. It looks like the crane's gotten stuck in the trees. The helicopter is up there though. And then we can also see them towing it down the road, because that's what you just naturally do. But anyways, as we can all tell, it doesn't really appear that the war effort for the Russians is going well. They're cannibalizing Ka-52s now. How much worse can it get, folks? When does it end? Well, let's go find this military. Oh, look! An old abandoned ammunition storage site. I bet you they're really putting that thing back into service recently. But let's see if we can find the military museum. Because it's got to be somewhere here in the beautiful city of Samara. Oh, look, they already have an Mi-24 on a stand right here.
Oh, they sure do.
For the VDV of all groups. But let's see. We've got to be able to find the museum itself. We have to be able to. You're the Russians. We have to know. We've got to be able to find this. Where in the world is it? Also, let's take a look at this hotel. $17 a night. It looks like a freaking Soviet prison. Look at that. Oh my God.
That is awful looking backrooms material right there.
This is where the KGB interrogations were held back in the 30s under Stalin. And this is also where they execute you in these chairs. This is what you expect for a hotel that's $17 a night. I'd expect that kind of quality here. Also, I like their main sign. Nash lot, which means our comfort. Oh boy, or your comfort, really. But they have a well? Bruh, blood be falling down the well. Oh my lord, this is terrible, actually. But anyways, moving on from that, it does appear that the Russians are running out of military equipment pretty speedily. Anyways, moving on from that and out of Sierzan, it is time for us to get on into the Baltic, as we were also able to hear today that the Polish Navy ran a sabotage vessel away, as the Polish Prime Minister stated that a Russian ship carried out suspicious maneuvers near a key undersea cable into Sweden. The incident triggered a swift response from the Polish military, forcing the vessel to retreat to a Russian port. Defense Minister Władysław Kosniak-Kamys, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, confirmed the cable belongs to the Polish grid operator PSE, but remains operational. A patrol flight was launched in a specialized naval vessel. ORP, I'm not even going to pronounce that, was sent to the scene. A high-level security meeting with Donald Tusk is set for Thursday in Gdynia, if I'm pronouncing that correct. I made that as slurred as possible so that way if I was getting it right or wrong, no one could tell. The 600 megawatt cable linking Karlshamn, Sweden and Utska, Poland is a vital part of the regional energy security. So it does appear that they ran off a sabotage vessel today, and that's also at the same time as the French are sending a surveillance ship into the Baltic to keep track of all those shadow tankers, and now NATO forces or European forces, and possibly seizing and detaining these vessels if the need ever arises. We were able to see that the ship was in Helsinki yesterday. Picture of it right there in Helsinki yesterday. That's a French ship in Helsinki, and that was yesterday, if I haven't mentioned that. And did I mention that I was in Helsinki 24 hours ago? I think I did. But anyways, it appears that the European countries are starting to take the Russian shadow fleet's actions a little bit more seriously, or at least their ability to sabotage. But beyond that, Matthew, what are people thinking about the Russian activities that were going on near to that 600 megawatt cable today that was out there in the middle of the Baltic? Are people thinking that the Russians were trying to cut the cables or cut the cord? Or were they thinking that they were trying to cut the cord? Or were they thinking that the Russians were just probing defenses? Or did they think that it was maybe a spy ship filled with spies? Or maybe they were unsure and undecided. But it appears that everyone's unanimous on this one. Again, we're running polls tonight, Matthew, that I think have clear answers to them, but we like to see that everyone's on the same page. It's the kind of unity that Kim Jung Un could only dream of, and we get it here in the LSA for free. But Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about this as well?
So it looks like another whopping 86% said Russia was trying to cut the cable since they were lurking around the power cables, while 6% said it seems like a spy ship instead, and they were trying to spy on the local Polish area, and another 6% said Russia is probably just probing the defenses to see what the response times look like. And honestly, I'm definitely with 86%. They were lurking around the power cables. They have a history of cutting the power cables. So obviously, in my opinion, they were definitely trying to cut those cables. So I'm definitely solidly with the 85%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say that in my opinion, I'd have to be with the 85% as well. I think they were trying to cut the cord out there in the middle of the Baltic Sea. They've done it before. Why wouldn't they do it again? They've hit communications lines all over the place in most of the region. The communication lines going from, I believe, Latvia to Sweden, Estonia to Finland, and a decent amount of other ones. So why wouldn't they try and, up their hopes and expectations to hitting a 600 megawatt energy cable? It's not out of the question, at least in my opinion. So I would say that that's 100% what the vessel was doing, and the Polish had the right. They were down to rights. I guess you could say that they ran a poll on it and were unanimous that they had to get that thing out of the water. And they did. They ran it away, and it's gone now, and I think it returned back to a Russian port. And we actually were able to hear that apparently there was a radio transmission of the Polish-Russian interception. I don't have the actual transcript, but it went something like this. This is a Polish vessel. Kurva! And then the Russians went, yep, 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 as they went back to St. Petersburg. It was something like that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can in my opinion, or at least from the information that we have. But moving on out of that, it is time for us to get on into a little bit of that middle of the East news, because there's been a lot going on down in the middle of the East. Everyone knows what's going on down there. The Israelis are about to, bomb the Palestinians into oblivion in the Strip. The U.S. ain't happy with that. The Syrians are about to collapse. No one really cares. Iran's about to create a nuke. Everyone's treating that like it's a side thing these days. It's just a small little thing creating a weapon of mass destruction, a nuclear device that could kill millions of people, and it's used by a hostile and dangerous regime. That's nothing. But beyond that, we were able to hear that we are going through a fifth, y'all heard that correct, folks, a fifth round of talks with the Iranians in Rome. And I've heard that they have many friends in Rome. But nevertheless, the fifth round of nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran will take place on Rome on Friday, the May 23rd, according to the Omani foreign minister. And I gotta say, Omani, this is going nowhere fast. It's the fifth round of negotiations, and we see that people keep on making those Studio Ghibli things on the AI thing.
Why is the Iranian leader Khamenei holding his hand like that?
I don't know. Also, why does it look like the president's like a Zen master?
He looks like, those like donut shops that like put the calm like Zen person on their logo or whatever. It looks like that, like a donut shop logo.
Yeah, it really does, honestly. Like,
and who's that in the background? George Bush?
I think that's a mix of Bush and Bibi at the same time.
It's Bibi. Wow, that is not a good representation of Bibi right there.
No, it's not. Also, that teardrop almost looks like the teardrop tattoo that like a gang member would have for like executing someone, because they were caught lacking or something, But
Blood's got some bodies under his belt.
Yeah, beyond the whole Studio Ghibli thing that I really can't get off the screen because it's in the replies to this post, it appears that everyone is wondering, why are we going into fifth round of talks? Everyone knows that the old saying goes, the third time is the charm. We're now 2 times past the third time, and we're still trying, but I don't know why. I really can't explain it to y'all. Anyways, and I can't explain it to y'all because y'all wouldn't understand. The truth is, I can't understand. So I can't even explain it to y'all either. But moving on from that, and on into the Islamic Republic of Iran, we also were able to hear something else was interesting that was going on today. There was a strange occurrence that happened right inside of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, let me read to y'all what happened today, at least from what we're hearing. New Iranian activity has occurred in the Persian Gulf as of today. An unsanctioned oil tanker that is operated by a U.S. sanctioned entity and has probably illicitly transported oil to the People's Republic of China from Iran issued a false distress call in the Strait of Hormuz on the 20th of May. The tanker's pattern of behavior suggests it may have conducted a ship-to-ship transfer at some point while off the coast of Iran. Iran and the PRC are using ship-to-ship transfers to obfuscate the transportation of PRC purchases of Iranian oil. It does appear that at this moment, the Chinese and the Iranians are conducting what is called, in the international diplomatic terms, a shady transaction, or possibly an illicit transaction in violation of international sanctions and international law. What we call that on the street is some shady shit. But beyond that, it does appear that many people are saying that they may believe that the Iranians are still up to something at this point, as we've gotten no additional details or corroboration as to what happened to the Panamanian flag tanker that was captured yesterday by the Iranians, and we have not heard word of it since. We still haven't heard any developments on it. We believe that the vessel is still impounded in Bandar Abbas, and we've also gotten no statement from the Islamic Republic of Iran's government on the actual condition of the sailors who were on board that vessel. So we do not really know what is going on down there at this point, and this is still at the same time as multiple Iranian proxy groups are continuing to attack the state of Israel, as we were able to confirm that there was an interception today of a Qassam rocket fired by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a little bit of a new group that's entered into the fray. Pretty much the same thing as Hamas, but they're pretty much the same thing as Hamas. That's the best way to explain it. Same thing as Hamas, technically a different organization, but still largely affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Nevertheless, they fired off a rocket. They took credibility for it. and the rocket was intercepted and shot down over the city of Ashkelon. You can actually see the cloud from the explosion of the Iron Dome and the Qassam up there in the sky over the city of Ashkelon in this picture, and it is confirming that Iranian proxy forces are continuing aggressive militant actions against the state of Israel, even in the middle of the Operation Gideon's Chariot now underway by the Israelis, where they're starting to prepare and move in slowly back into the Gaza Strip for a possible indefinite occupation of the region. Nevertheless, it appears that many people have been talking and speaking their minds and opinions about what are the Iranians doing as the U.S. is entering the 5th round of Iranian talks as Israel prepares for the major attack that they have now stated they are going to be conducting, whether the U.S. wants them to or not. And a lot of people are wondering, will the nuclear talks in Rome, the 5th ones, succeed? And it seems that many people, the simple majority, over 51%, it's technically 52% at this point, said that Iran will just keep stalling. Others, a decent amount, are saying that Iran will beg for destruction. They beg for the sweet release of an American bombardment. Others are saying that the talks will succeed in part, not in whole, but in parts. And you can get it with 4 monthly down payments through Zelle. And others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this? What are you thinking about it as well? Do you think they're going to be getting into parts through a monthly payment program? Do you think that they're just stalling like a Boeing 737 MAX over Central Africa? Or do you think that they're begging for destruction? Like many enemies of the Republic have always done, as they are an affront to democracy and an affront to the people of this great nation.
So it looks like 52% said Iran will just keep stalling, while 37% said no, Iran will beg for destruction, and 7% said yes, the talks will succeed in part. And at this point, it seems like the Iranians are following suit with the Russians. They have found a infinite food hack or an infinite diplomacy hack. Just keep stalling and hope for the best, because apparently you can keep stringing people along indefinitely and nobody bats an eye at it. So that's what they're doing. They're still stalling and they're taking cues from Putin, and now Khamenei is adopting the same strategy. So will the talks succeed? I say probably not. But once again, Iran is an extremist regime. They're not worried about getting bombed by Israel, even though that's going to be very devastating to them. They would rather have that happen than to give in to the West, because it's like giving in to the hated West, and they will not do that. They would rather take a bombing from Israel before they did that. So I don't think they're going to succeed. I don't think they're going to beg for destruction either, but they'll probably get it from Israel anyway. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say that, in my opinion, I think the Iranians are just stalling. Everyone has found out that there's this cool thing. It's like an infinite money glitch in GTA 5, where you can just infinitely force the United States into diplomatic negotiations, and they'll never walk away because they're scared to walk away, because they're scared they'll actually have to follow through with doing something. So everyone's found out, the Russians and the Iranians, if they just say that they're open to talks, the U.S. will just keep talking to them, even if it's quite clear that they don't have any honest intention of negotiating anything in earnest or in good faith. So with that in mind, the Iranians are just doing this to stall. I would have to agree with the simple majority on that. And I also have to say that the second thing that a lot of people are going with is that they're begging for destruction. They pretty much are. Is it going to come around from the United States? Most likely not. Once again, the U.S. has a pretty decent issue at this point, at least on the administrative level, with any kind of follow through. You know, like we say something and then we don't actually do anything about it. You know, we'll say something like, you know, the Russians don't actually mean peace seriously in Istanbul. We're going to give Ukraine more support than they've ever gotten, and the Russian economy is going to be on its knees. And then they don't take it seriously, and then there is no ceasefire. And then we just, you know, backtrack on all that. And then we go, let's talk to Putin. Maybe he wants peace. We don't really know yet. And then they call him and, oh, look, he wants peace. Let's do it again. So, you know, that's pretty much the same thing that Iran's figured out. And so while they're pretty much begging for destruction, the U.S. will probably never give it to them, because all that would happen is that the president would get on the phone with Khamenei and go, do you like peace? And then Khamenei would go, yes, inshallah. And then he'd go, okay, that's good enough for me. And then we go into another round of talks. And we'll just keep that going until they have a nuke. And then there's no point in having talks. And then you know what will happen? Y'all know what will happen, folks? This is probably the comedy of it all. Is that once they get a nuke, guess what's going to happen? We're going to have more talks with them about getting rid of the nuke. Like we're going to have talks with them about not making a nuke. And then when they get one, we're probably going to start talking to them about getting rid of the nuke. And they're just going to keep running us in circles, stop us from doing anything, and, you know, we'll just never give up. So we'll just keep talking to them, even if they're nuking the United States. We'll have a talk with them about turning the nuclear missile around after it's been fired at the United States. We'll talk to them about that until the nuke hits, and then even after it hits, we'll go, I don't know, maybe they really don't want to do that again, and then we'll talk to them some more. Maybe, I don't know.
It's gonna be like one of those nuclear missile buyback programs. You know how they like buy back guns from people that really shouldn't have them? They're like, oh, we'll buy your guns for you, like the sheriff department will. The United States is gonna be like, we'll buy back your nukes if you'll just give them to us. We'll pay you for them.
Dude, Iran would say, how much would you give me? And we'll say, like an expired coupon to Shoney's. They don't even exist anymore, really. And they'd be like, oh, they'd be like, hell no. But anyways, with that, I hope we were able to cover this whole thing somewhat well, at least with what we're hearing right now. But with that, it is time for us to move on up into the rest of the Ukraine war news, because we still have a lot of frontline news and details to get on into. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we address some of the questions of the night that we've been able to get. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat question of the night, we have a $20 super chat from Erling Gruel, and thank you very much, Erling, for that $20 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And Erling said, "LSA forever," and take one from the chat.
Hey, and I gotta thank you so much for the support, Erling Gruel, and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And of course, we'll take one from the chat in your honor, Erling. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew, from the live chat in honor of Erling Gruel?
So this live chat question goes to Shaggy, who says, with Ukraine now hitting Moscow, do you think Putin will intensify strikes in key Ukrainian cities?
I think that that's pretty much almost a guarantee at this point. Both sides are striking each other's major cities as much as they can, and considering that the Russians launched the largest drone attack possible just several days ago, on the first reporting day of this week, which was about 7 days ago, I would say that they've pretty much increased the tempo to the highest that they can at this point in Russia. So I would say no, just for that fact, because they pretty much already ramped it up to the max from what we've been able to see so far. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Erling Gruel, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to get live chats like that, and we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wabba, another channel legend, and thank you very much, Wabba, for that $20 support as well. And Wabba says, coffee fun, and I need it worse than you do.
And I gotta say, coffee is an important thing. But you know, today, folks, I gotta say, I'm actually hype and excited, not because of coffee, but because I had a well-balanced sleep schedule. I didn't get too much sleep. I didn't get too little sleep. I got just the right amount of sleep. And that's rare. That's very rare. And so I actually feel quite energetic and excited today. I feel like I could tackle the whole world, and we largely did. We put out a great video today. It got a lot of views. And so far, we've had a really good stream tonight. About 60,000 people have watched in the first hour, which is pretty impressive. And on top of that, we had a peak viewership here tonight of 11.4 thousand people, which, you know, is like a small football stadium, or a medium-sized football stadium, really, which is pretty cool. I mean, who could ever complain about that? But beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Wubba, and helping us to have some coffee, because coffee helps us to keep this thing rolling day in and day out. And that is something that we are entirely appreciative of, because if it wasn't for amazing folks like you who supported this channel day in and day out, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible and keep it running. Now, I got to thank you massively, Wubba, because no one has to actually support the channel if they don't want to, yet folks have continuously done it. Even in times like these, where it appears that economic hardships might be making it a little bit more difficult for people to support, we are still able to keep this channel running primarily because of folks like you. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, and this one goes to Just Chillin', who puts in a $20 donation as well. And thank you very much, Just Chillin', for just chilling here and also supporting the channel. And he said, I'm very happy to see that North Korea has contributed to the world ecosystem by donating a coral reef to the world sea.
They really did, and it's one of those exposed above water coral reefs too. Part of it's above the water, part of it's underwater. You get the best of both worlds. You get a little seal club on top of the above water area, and then you get a little reef below it. I like it. Who can complain? I think it's a great thing, really, and I gotta thank you for pointing that out. And I also gotta thank you for putting in a good joke on that, because that was one of the funniest things that I've ever seen recently, Just Chillin', and I think that actually was pretty funny to a lot of people because we had 11.4 thousand people in tonight just to hear about that story, which is pretty funny in its own right. But I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, just chilling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible and keep this thing running. It is an amazing thing to know that folks like you have been able to keep this channel running for so long, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And of course, I've got to say, that if it wasn't for all of the amazing folks on the Lee Spring Army, we would not be able to continue to keep this thing running and say, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And of course, I've got to say that although, of course, I gotta say this is something that we have noticed, is that it appears that maybe the economic hardships has gotten a little bit rougher in America because the amount of support that we're getting on the streams every night is dropping a good bit, but we are still happy to know that people enjoy the channel enough that even in these kinds of difficulties, people are still going out of their way to support the channel and help it to keep on running, because without y'all, this just simply would not be possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. A huge thanks to all of y'all who are supporting tonight once again. And also, I've got to say, what a rude comment from Anthony Silva. Heavens, I'm just trying to add a little bit of brevity to our news, and here this guy comes in acting like he's a negative Nancy. What a terrible thing there. But anyways, moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, into the area of Belgorod, we were able to see that the Ukrainians were hitting Russian forces quite significantly in the 225th Assault Regiment as they are continuing to hold their territory in Belgorod and are continuing to push even further forward. We can see here a Russian position where a Russian seems to be setting up some sort of a communication system, possibly. And we can see them here zooming out and showing where the position is. We can now see the Ukrainian drone moving in to take out the communication system, quite literally, as soon as it was set up. We can now see it flying into what appears to be, actually past the communication system and into what appears to be some sort of a bunker and outpost, hitting the entrance and blowing the thing to smithereens. And that's the end of the clip right there, but still very nice to see. Moving on from that clip and into our next one, we also got to see them hitting an electronic warfare system in the Phoenix unit. And we can see the electronic warfare's vehicle getting hit right there under that grain elevator, and we can also see it getting hit a second time.
That's a strange looking contraption right there. Looks like one of those AT&T like switcher buildings.
Yeah, it kind of does. I think it's a grain elevator, but I might be wrong on that. But still, they did hit that electronic warfare vehicle hiding below it, and it was a success. Moving on out of the Belgorod area and on down into the location unknowns, we were also able to see this beautiful Susanna SPG in the sunset. I love the Susanna. It's a great looking SPG. It's pretty unique, and it's just cool all around, and the pictures were great. The pics go hard, feel free to screenshot. Moving on from that and into the next clip, we also get to see some Russians, well, actually that one got censored, to explain really quickly what was going on down there. It appears that some Russians were riding on the back of a Jeep that was laying out razor wire. They hit a bump, and the Russians fell off right into the razor wire. The vehicle didn't stop, and so it dragged the razor wire all over them for like a good couple of 100 yards. So that looked to be a little bit nasty. But moving on from that, we also get to see these pictures of this American-made M1A1 Abrams in training with the Ukrainian 47th Brigade. And we can see all the great pictures coming out right here. Look at that. It's a
Very nice.
A Mad Maxified M1A1 Abrams. What a sight to see. We love to see it, and they're really cool looking. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news and on into our next clip, we also got to see the Russian casualty report, and holy moly, there's a Bobcat!
They got one Bobcat. I must say, very nice to see. One single Bobcat. I love to see it. Of course, it was probably the top spec model. They probably took it out in glorious style. Kind of like they did that North Korean boat. But tell us more.
I got to say that it is quite an impressive day. And Miss Disa, keeper of the records, was able to tell us that it's another day in the past week under 1,000 troop losses. This looks like an average day from a year ago before the summer offensive. And it largely does, actually. Miss Disa is pretty dead on the nail with that. But we were able to hear that 980 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 2 APCs, 76 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 23 artillery systems, 71 drones, and 1 Bobcat skid steer, which is, of course, an amazing casualty report to see. It isn't as high as it used to be back in the late winter months of last year and this year, but it is still quite a decent day, all things considered, when looking at any other day in the war. Meanwhile, in the Vovchansk area, we were able to hear the Ukrainian intelligence is stating that the Russians are preparing a large-scale offensive in this area, as Ukraine is recording a significant accumulation of Russian forces near to the state border of Kharkiv, suggesting that a new offensive is going to be coming around the corner. And that actually begs the question, that polls on something else. I was assuming it was on that. We're just going to move on from that and forget that I even brought anything up. We also got to see in the area of Alexievka in Belgorod that there was a significant fire inside of the town. It looks like someone didn't practice fire safety standards.
Bring out the Russian pancake fire, man, because this thing's burning to the ground.
Oh? Was this person running right here? Was that the arsonist? Like, bro, they are, like, running.
He was booking it.
Bro, he's running. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. We're going to be moving on from that and further on down into our next one inside of the northern Kharkiv area, where we were able to see the 82nd hitting Russian targets in the region. We can see here the 82nd Brigade's intro, which is a mechanized Hawk dropping a bomb. And we can now see the drone coming in to hit the Russian communication systems. We see them hitting the antenna and the dish. We now see them trying to hit an ATV, it appears. That Russian fell off.
Oh, he broke his ankle. Look.
Bro, he didn't even need Michael Jordan in the area, and he broke his ankles. Man, that's a sad one. Oh, look. Another ATV, a UAZ, a pickup truck, and another UAZ. We can then see a radar dish getting hit, a couple of outposts, a generator, the back of a main battle tank, maybe a T-80, a couple of communication systems, an outpost, a trench that is now getting hit here in this part of the clip. Also, by the way, if y'all are wondering why the cuts are so quick, this is why. That's the music that's playing. Like, I think y'all can kind of get an idea from just the sound bit what kind of song that was. But we can see here that at the end, they roll the credits, and we watch a Russian APC burning in the fields near to a pile of dragon's teeth. What a poetic ending to such an amazing clip from the 82nd Air Assault Brigade. Moving on out of that area, and further down the line towards the region of Krasnoyarsk, we also get to hear that apparently the Russians are creating a new 100-kilometer range autonomous drone that is operated pretty much entirely by artificial intelligence. And this, according to Clash Report, was very interesting, as opposed to just interesting. But Russia is reportedly using kamikaze drones that autonomously select and strike targets. They operate without GPS, using cameras and computer vision alone. They can hit targets up to 100 kilometers from the front line and do not distinguish between military and civilian targets. They run on gasoline, increasing their range, and decide on their own when and where to strike. The source was Defense Express, but we were able to hear about these drones from the Ukrainians today, and they appear to be somewhat concerning to the Ukrainians because not only can they affect Ukrainian logistics supply lines further behind the lines, even 100 kilometers away from the front, but they also could impact the civilians as well that are living in incredibly far ways away from the front, literally 70 miles back, because these drones could start to target and destroy civilian vehicles, mistaking them for military equipment. It appears that the wars of the future, like the ones in the movie Terminator, are at least becoming a reality for the Russian army, as they're pretty much sending off drones on their own that are just going to find anything and hit it. Pretty much anything that moves is mostly going to be targeted by that drone, which kind of begs the question, if that thing accidentally, turned hard right or did a complete 180, is it going to target and destroy Russian civilian vehicles in Russian forces? That's a good question. But beyond that, a lot of people have been talking about this development and whether it's concerning or not, and it appears that a decent amount of people are saying that the development of a drone like this is quite concerning. It's actually very concerning to many people. Others are saying that the Ukrainians have no issues with it and they don't really care, and some are saying more details are needed and some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 65% of the people said yes, that is very concerning for Ukraine, that the Russians are now using AI targeting drones to go and hit various different targets, including military and civilian, while 16% said more details are needed, and 13% said no, Ukraine will have no issues dealing with it. And I don't think Ukraine will have I don't think they'll have issues, if I can speak properly, dealing with these drones. I think they will take them out very easily, like they've done pretty much every other drone. But the problem will be, like the enforcer mentioned, they don't distinguish between the civilian nor the military targets. So when these drones go into an area and start targeting something, it doesn't look at like a civilian vehicle and say, oh, that's a civilian, that's not military. These drones are not really AI powered. They're more like dumb drones with a little bit of programming behind them, and they will go in and they'll strike the civilians and it will not know the difference. So the Russians don't care, obviously. They're sending them in mass now, and I'm sure we're going to hear of a lot more civilian casualties as a result of this new drone. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, it is fairly concerning. In my opinion, I'd have to be with 65%. The risks of civilian collateral, as well as these drones causing some significant disruptions to the supply lines, are significant. And it appears that the Russian Federation is starting to rapidly attempt to develop their own drone forces because resource-wise and monetarily, they're running out of money. So they also have to figure out how to try and cheapen up the war on their end, much like the Ukrainians cheapened up the conflict for themselves by largely investing in developing cheap mass-produced drones like these. So I don't really know what's going to be coming out of this in the future, but I would say that it is quite concerning, and I would be pretty certain that the Ukrainians are already trying to work on a countermeasure to this system at this very moment. But moving on from that and out of that little poll right there and on to the rest of the news that we have, we also were able to see that the Ukrainians were conducting some anti-drone activity near to the area of the Severonsky Forest in the city of Seversk today as they were continuing to hit solid drones. This one actually went evasive right here. Look at this. You rarely ever see him go evasive. But now it's lined up again, just trying to conduct its run. It thought it shook the Ukrainian drone, but it didn't. It got taken out. We can see another Zala getting targeted and destroyed, and a third one here.
Man, the Ukrainians have those Russian drones moving like an invasive species out here.
Man, that is of Zabra that got them moving like an invasive species. Anyways, that's the end of the clip. Very nice to see. I thought that we'd get laugh. No laugh. But moving on from that and down into a Solidar, we also get to see Russian forces getting pelted by drones of the 54th Mechanized Brigade. When you see the drone coming on in, it's getting ready to pelt the Russians. And look, they're all grouping up. They're like, quick, run away and group up. And it's a bad mistake for them. Went right in the middle of the crowd, probably sending shrapnel into most of them. And we can actually see this from a third-person POV. Yep, and it did exactly what I said it would. We now see the Mickey Mouse reticle lining up to enter the window of a house. And it looks like that just got turned into the Ruski house clubhouse. Come inside, it's warm inside, it's the burning house clubhouse. Like he's running away down on the street. Though you can see them hitting it again with a more significant explosive this time, possibly artillery. And that's the end of the clip, and of course, as we all know, slow! But moving on from that and on out of that clip and down further on towards Chesivyar, we also were able to see another Zala drone being downed in this area by the 24th Mechanized Brigade. We see them lining up the drone. This is actually a Russian POV, by the way. I forgot to include that. But this is the Russian POV of what they saw when the drone attacked them. So we can see the Ukrainian drone coming on up. And they're gone. And there goes the drone. A successful hit. But moving on from that, further down the street, or further down the front for the large part, and into the area of Pokrovsk, we also get to see that on the front lines near Seladove, the Russian positions are looking quite bleak for the large part. We got to see a small Russian POV driving through the town of Seladove today, and it looked depressing. Like Pyongyang almost. They drove past an MT-12 and a burning Ural. That honestly looks like the set for a movie, like set in a post-apocalyptic setting. But moving
It really does. The lighting's just right.
Man, it was just right. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainians throwing in the limpet mine. And also playing the heavy metal, which we're not here for because that's copyrighted and that's scary. But we can see here, they're throwing in the limpet mine. Whoop. And when I'm calling it a limpet mine because it's a mine I remember fairly well, but it's just a giant explosive charge. That giant thing he's throwing in, that's the bomb. So there goes the bomb right here. Yoink! They close the flap, and then they run the hell away because it's about to blow up the whole building. And here any second now, it's about to blow. Kind of like Hot Dog Man or Chris's mom, but here it goes, and there goes the building. Pretty impressive. But moving on out of that clip, as the Ukrainians are continuing to defend the front in this area and are continuing to bombard Russian positions at point-blank range in towns like Lysivka just south of Pokrovsk, we also were able to see, near to the area of Velika Novosilka, that the Ukrainian 71st Jaeger Brigade was also taking its time repelling the Russians. When you see them hitting Russian vehicles that were attempting an assault in the fields, and knocking out a pretty significant number of them. These are probably some of the few APCs that are operational in most units within this area, meaning that Russia's offensive abilities are starting to dwindle significantly and are pretty much getting down to either foot assaults or motorbike-assisted assaults, which are also about as low in success rates as just foot-based assaults at this point. We can see them continuing to hit the Russian forces in this area, as the Russians run for the trees, quite literally.
Oh, dear.
Oh, deer. We can see the Russian vehicles hopping out of the tree line and attempting to get back on the move, as the Ukrainians are now trying to hit them with artillery fire. We now see another drone coming in and hitting a Russian Ural that was inside of the tree line. And we can also see one of the vehicles. Both of the vehicles actually are on fire at this point.
Also, name the quote. Who said it? Deer. Oh, deer.
That would be Piglet from Winnie the
Oh,
Pooh.
you weren't supposed to name it, man. It was supposed to be for the audience.
Oh.
Obviously, you know who it was.
Man, you didn't address that. Like, you didn't tell me it was for them. I thought it was for me. Like, oh, hell. Oh, that Russian just got turned into confetti. And we can also see this vehicle here getting hit, turning into a nice roaring campfire. Well, that's the end of the clip right there, but nice to see nevertheless. Moving on from that and further on down the lines, we also got to see outside of the front lines in Ukraine and all the way in the U.S. of A. at Vandenberg Space Force Base that we conducted a successful Minuteman III ICBM test launch. And the Russians said that nuke launches are difficult. We fired off a nuke that's been in service for over 50 years at this point, and it worked just fine. Here's the clip. Any second there. There we go. There's the opening of the silo, and here comes the launch. I always like these grainy-looking security cameras. It looks like they'll be included in a creepypasta soon, but there's the launch of the Minuteman III, and off it goes into the wild blue yonder. The launch was successful. The missile, along with its MIRV, traveled 7,000 miles, meaning that the operation or the test was a complete success by all measures. And once again showing that the United States nuclear arsenal is not one for show like Russia's. It actually works.
Where did it splash down at?
I actually don't know. I know that it traveled 7,000 miles from what I heard, but I don't actually know where it splashed down.
If it traveled 7,000 miles, wouldn't that have made it pretty much to the next continent over?
I think so, yeah. We'll measure it out in a second and see where it could have gone. But I don't actually know where it went. But we can see it on its actual, at least boost phase here, getting on its way into its mid-course. And there goes the stage separation right there. Really impressive to watch. But let's see how far this thing actually made it. So from Vandenberg, put down the measuring line, 7,000 miles. So we could have fired it towards the Arctic.
Interesting. That's a long way to go. That's a pretty potent test.
So let's see, 7,000 miles. Oh, wow, we could have hit all of China. Or we could have hit, let's see here. We could have hit Moscow, or we could have hit really anywhere in Russia. That's pretty neat. Yeah, we could have literally...
Why didn't we just test it on Siberia? We could have just, given them a little taste.
Oh, give it a little taste. Like, give it a little one. We could have. Like, that's not out of the question, but I don't really know if the folks up there would want to take that kind of action just yet. But it's
it's like deserted up there anyway. It's like nobody even in Siberia.
Let's see. 7,000 miles. Can we hit North Korea? Oh, yeah, we could have. Yeah, we could have. Let's see. We could have hit China, like, pretty much anywhere. Let's see. Actually, we wouldn't have been able to hit India and Pakistan at that kind of range. We would need about 8,000 miles of range. Could have hit anywhere, really anywhere in the world, actually, except for Africa, which would be a little bit too far away, funnily enough. And also... Well, we could have hit everything in South America. Honestly, we could have hit everything but the Indian subcontinent, most of the Middle East, and Africa. Those were most.
Honestly, South Africa, I'm sure, is feeling happy that they're safe after today's explosive little meeting. I'm sure they're thinking, "Oh, look, they can't reach us with their nukes at least."
look at this clip. Like, it's like, oh, okay, all right, that's an interesting approach. But anyways, moving on from that, it does appear the U.S. ICBM test launch was successful. But the question was, why do we do it? What do we do it for? The U.S. successfully tested the Minuteman ICBM after Russia reportedly failed. A lot of people have been putting in their thoughts, and it appears that a lot of people are going with the idea that the U.S. was saying ours work and yours doesn't. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So about 62% said the USA basically said by doing this test that ours work and yours don't to Russia, while 30% said it was just a routine test, and 3% said it's really meaningless. And honestly, I'm definitely with the 62%. The test is somewhat meaningless because, of course, we have to believe that the Russians have working nuclear weapons in some regard or another, but it was making a statement, basically telling Russia, whose test reportedly just failed a short couple of days ago, that ours do definitely work. And not only do they work, but they work very well, so don't mess with us. That was the message, and I'm with the 63%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would agree that it's more of a message of ours work and yours don't, just considering the timing of the operation. It was a normal launch. These are usually planned out, and we've been conducting these for a while now throughout the course of the past 2 years at pretty frequent intervals. But this one will most likely carry that message because our nuke launches aren't failing. The Russians are failing quite often. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And returning us on back to Kyiv, it's time for us to get on into the air defense report over Ukraine, as we were able to hear that 76 drones were launched last night, 22 of them were shot down directly, and 41 of them were suppressed through electronic warfare measures and did not reach the target, meaning that out of the 76 drones that were launched, 63 of them were successfully shot down over the state of Ukraine, meaning that only 13 of them made it through the air defense and to their targets, meaning that the interception rate was actually pretty significant. But moving on from that and into Kyiv, it's time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1183 of the war. And so, they started a little early. Without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Дорогі українці, українки, щойно була тривала доповідь міністра оборони України Умєрова і військових командувачів щодо фронту, щодо наших оборонних відносин з партнерами. Російські штурмові дії тривають, і наші сили продовжують всю необхідну бойову активність. Найбільш гаряча ситуація на Донеччині, особливо Покровський напрямок. Продовжуємо активні дії в Курській та Белгородській областях. Це захист Сумщини, це захист Харківщини. Активний та дієвий наш захист. Від початку Курської операції в серпні російська армія зазнала серйозних втрат. Більш ніж 63 тисячі убитими і пораненими тільки там, на Курщині. Також нашим силам вдалося суттєво поповнити обмінний фонд для України. Що більше бойових дій виноситься на територію ворога, тим більше це убезпечує наші громади. На жаль, росіяни не дають сигналів щодо припинення вогню. І вони поки не готові війну завершувати. Отже, всі наші форми тиску, вся наша робота з партнерами заради тиску на Росію – це те, що абсолютно потрібно. Тиск переконує, тиск на полі бою, тиск в економіці. І саме для цього санкції. Тиск в політиці. Я хочу подякувати всім, хто підтримує Україну. Я хочу відзначити зараз наших воїнів, які проявили себе цими тижнями. Це наша 14-та бригада Національної гвардії України. Дякую вам. Також 36-та бригада морської піхоти. Також 25-й штурмовий батальйон. 1-й штурмовий полк. Дякую всім вам. Це захист саме на Покровському напрямку. Також вдячний за дії на Курщині. Кожному нашому солдату хочу подякувати, кожному сержанту, офіцеру, усім нашим підрозділам. Міністр оборони України доповів деталі роботи з партнерами заради нового постачання зброї. Активно працюємо і над залученням інвестицій у виробництво саме в Україні. Виробництво буде тільки зростати. І це наша довгострокова гарантія безпеки. Я провів кілька міжнародних розмов сьогодні. Президент Євроради Кошта поінформував його про переговори з Америкою та відповідні домовленості з іншими європейцями. Детально готуємо і перемовний процес щодо вступу України. З нашого боку все готово саме для відкриття перших кластерів. Говорив також про це з прем'єр-міністром Польщі Туском. Триває польське головування в ЄС. І важливо, щоб це було результативне головування. Говорив із генеральним секретарем НАТО Марком Рютте, в тому числі про можливі формати зустрічі та спільної роботи. Разом зміцнюємо дипломатію. Ще одна принципова річ. Ми готуємо обмін. Фактично, щодня доповіді ми маємо звільнити всіх наших людей, безумовно. Ми перевіряємо інформацію по кожному прізвищу. Стараємось зробити максимум можливого. Дуже стараємось. Слава Україні!
And Ram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that is going to be moving us on into the next segment of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks. Is it a great segment? It is a wonderful segment, because we get to talk about anything and everything from this point on. And I hope that y'all enjoyed this stream tonight. I hope y'all did. It was one hell of a stream. You don't really hear about North Korean ships flipping over and capsizing at launch every day, so that was a bit new. And you also don't really hear about massive drone attacks happening from the Ukrainian side on the Russians every day either. You really don't hear about all the other things that happen every single day beyond what's happening on the Ukrainian front lines, which is pretty much run-of-the-mill at this point. But nevertheless, we are going to be getting into this segment where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And if you are new to this channel, which I'm assuming some of y'all may actually be new, I have to say, welcome. And I also have to explain something really quickly, so that way folks know. This channel does run as a free-to-play system. It is not a pay-to-play system, so you do not have to throw in a super chat to have a question answered. Nevertheless, this channel runs primarily, pretty much entirely, on super chat support alone. That is the only way we're able to pay the bills and keep the lights on here at Enforcer HQO. Well, HQ, not HQO.
HQO. That's like a water HQ.
But that's the only way we're able to keep the lights on at Enforcer HQ, so we always make sure to address super chats first and thank each and every one of them individually for their support, because if it wasn't for them, because no one has to support, but these folks are going out of their way to do it, we wouldn't be able to have a show to run. And also, especially considering that that's becoming a lot more pressing and important, because over the past days, we've noticed that there's been a significant drop in support through super chats, which may be because of some sort of a downturn in the economy, or something along those lines. We're not entirely sure, but beyond that, we have to be very appreciative to these folks, because they are really, quite literally, the lifeline that me and Enforcer Matt have to be able to financially support ourselves to where we do this as our full-time job, about 70 hours a week. So I hope that many people do understand that, and I hope that everyone appreciates these folks that are super chatting, and the call-outs and appreciation to them, because whether people are supporting or not, the people who are supporting are making this stream possible for quite literally everyone who's here, us included. And so we always want to give them their time and appreciation and thanks, because if it wasn't for them, like I say after every single super chat, this thing would not be possible. And that's just not a statement to make people feel appreciated. It's quite honestly the truth. But with that, it is time for us to get on into the remainder of the questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And also, real quick, we do have some very unfortunate breaking news that literally just happened about 5 minutes ago. We just heard that in Washington, D.C., some gunmen showed up and apparently shot, it looks like, 2 Israeli embassy staff members. Let's see here. And they were killed near the Capitol Jewish Museum in D.C., according to sources. And the gunmen were shouting "Free Palestine" as they shot them. So appears to be a terror attack in D.C. just happening about, it looks like maybe 5 to 30 minutes ago. Quite a bad one, actually. A humongous first responder scene on the street, by the way, like cops literally lining every street. And it appears to be very bad. And we're not told who the Israeli embassy staff are, but it was 2 Israeli embassy staff members that were shot. So very bad indeed. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's incredibly unfortunate to hear. I don't have a lot of details on that at the moment, but that is a very unfortunate tragedy to hear about, and it sounds as though it is some sort of an act of terror at this point that's happened in Washington, D.C. So with that, my condolences to the people who have been killed. It appears that 2 have been confirmed dead at this point, which were victims of the gunman. But it appears that the Washington, D.C. police were able to get control of the situation, and the shooting is over, although it did result in the loss of 2 lives, unfortunately. So it appears that we'll probably be seeing that there will be a little bit of an investigation into those sorts of sentiments in the United States, because it appears that they may be involved with terroristic activities at this point. But with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can off of the fly, and we are on to the questions themselves. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping right into our super chat segment, our last one on the stream, we did get a very generous $50 donation from Gary Robbins, who, of course, is a very long-time channel legend. And thank you very much, Gary, for throwing in the largest super chat of the night, and we sincerely do appreciate that. And he said, wear T-shirts supporting Ukraine.
Hey, and I gotta thank you for the support, Gary Robbins, and I'd agree. Why not? Why not wear T-shirts supporting Ukraine? Let folks know that you support the state of Ukraine because it's in American and Western interest. It's not just in their interest to protect their own state; it's also within ours for greater European security assurances and other alliance reasons. And I gotta say, I thank you massively for the support, Gary Robbins, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because you've been around for an incredibly long time. We got to thank you massively for support and helping this channel to always be a reality. Because folks like you have made it possible for us to support American and Western interests around the globe, including Ukraine. And we are always greatly appreciative and very thankful to all of our viewers who go out of their way to do something no one ever has to do, which is support the channel. Huge thanks to you so much once again. And of course, I think that's always important for people to be active in a civil way in supporting causes that they believe are in the nation's best interests. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Andrew Barbaro, another channel legend. And thank you very much, Andrew, for the $25 support. And he said, good day and good night, gentlemen, and take one from the chat.
And a good day to you, and a good night to you, Andrew. And I gotta say, it was great to have you here tonight. I always know you're here because I always see that Papa Smurf profile picture, and I remember watching the Smurfs as a kid. So I always remember that whenever I see you in here. But I gotta thank you for being here with us tonight, and I gotta thank you for enjoying it and giving us a good evening, a hello, a good evening, and a good night. And I hope that you have a great night's rest tonight, Andrew Barbaro, and that you get up and you recharge and you're ready to go to see tomorrow's news, because it's probably going to be a pretty big day again, at least tomorrow. So with that, huge thanks to you so much once again, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question goes to Larry Champagne, who said, enforcers, if Iran gets a nuke, will they use it or will they keep it for deterrence?
Iran will most likely keep it for deterrence purposes. Nuclear weapons actually serve the most utility as a form of deterrence against invasion, and also protection of their supposed interests. So this means that Iran would really be able to support and do whatever they wanted with their terrorist organizations throughout the Middle East, and no one could ever take any direct action to strike at the source, which would be Iran itself, because they would have a nuclear weapon at everyone's throats. So they probably would be used more so in a deterrence standoff form than in any form of an aggressive situation. Because if they use their only nuke, like let's say they just got it and they use their first nuke on Israel, what stops them from everyone responding? They don't have another nuke at that point. So they went from being a nuclear armed country to a conventionally armed country again, and then they're pretty much open to be hit. So they'll be keeping their nuclear weapons for deterrence purposes pretty much entirely, because that's the way most countries that get nuclear, well, pretty much all countries that have ever gotten a nuclear weapon, that's the way every single one of them roll as far as nuclear policy. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can. And a huge thanks to you once again, Andrew Barbaro, for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And once again, I hope that you sleep well tonight. And I hope you don't have to sleep with one eye open either. I don't know why that sounded like intimidating. I was trying to make that sound like funny, and then that sounded intimidating like a mob thing. I hope you don't sleep with one eye open. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And a big thanks to you once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here is going to go to none other than Dustin Thompson, who also put in a $20 support. And thank you for Dustin as well for that support. And he said they're going to need a lot of rice.
Oh, they're going to need a lot. Like, what are we going to do to help out this Chohyon destroyer? I know. dunk it in rice like an iPhone. That ought to work. They're going to need an insane amount of rice. Everyone in North Korea is going to go starving because they're going to have to confiscate all the rice in the country. They go throw this destroyer in it. And then they won't even have enough anyways because, the rice in North Korea amounts to maybe a handful, or in the words of Kim Jung Un, a small snack. But beyond that, I get to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make good jokes, and I appreciate good jokes. I really do. I make a lot of dad jokes every single night. Someone went crazy earlier tonight. Some guy called Anthony Silva, who's been around for a while here on the channel, went crazy and went off on us and cussed us out because of the jokes, but I ain't stopping making the jokes because people like you appreciate a good dad joke, and you also make a great one in return. And I really respect people who have a sense of humor and also use it. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to be here right now today. And so big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to none other than Rad Doctor, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Rad Doctor, for the 20, and we do appreciate that. And he said, over the last 3 years, what viewer comment pissed you off the most, and what was the nicest thing a viewer said? And LSA.
Oh, dang. That's a good question. Honestly, we forget all of the negative comments after a while. Let's see. One of the ones that it would have angered me the most, starting off there and then going positive here in a second. One of the ones that would anger me the most would have been, I'm not even going to really describe them, but it was some people from the Hot Dog Man group that were trying something new, and they started to say the most heinous, vile things in the chat. Y'all never saw it. Matthew probably has a good idea of what I'm talking about right now, but we were banning them. They were in for like a whole hour that night, just throwing it in different accounts time and time again, and it was like some really bad, it was horrendous stuff that they were putting in. That was probably what pissed me off the most, and that happened like a half year ago at this point. But I still remember that was probably the most heinous kind of slander that they ever did. But the comment that made me the happiest in a way would have been the comments that were made after CME for PC passed away, which was a very unfortunate thing. If y'all don't know, it was a while ago actually. We had a viewer who was on this channel really ever since the beginning called CME for PC, and he was a viewer who was terminally ill with cancer, I believe, and was pretty much slowly dying while he was watching the show. But he always got on every single night. He always enjoyed the channel, always watched it every single day religiously. For the large part, was involved in all the fan servers when they existed, was involved, I believe, in the community servers after we got rid of our Discord channels here for this channel. And one day he passed away, of course, because he was terminally ill. But I believe it was his girlfriend or wife who reached out to both Matthew and me afterwards and told us that the channel meant everything to CME for PC and that he enjoyed watching it, and it really was something. That was probably the comment that made the most meaning to us, because at the end of the day, to us, we're just running a show where we just, yap, we say goofy stuff. We pretty much just goof around with all of y'all. But the fact that it meant a lot to someone in their final months and days of pretty much being alive, that they really enjoyed this channel and the community and everyone who was on it, and the kind of show that we ran and what we did every night, that was something that meant a lot to me. And I still think about that from time to time, even to this day, long after, well, it feels like it was a long time. In reality, it wasn't that long ago. It was really, I think, about a year and a half or 2 years ago at this point. But I still think about that from time to time, and I always think that while we think that we're just running a channel that really means nothing in the big scheme of things, and we're always just, on here yapping or covering the news every day, it really does mean a lot to folks like CME4PC and a lot of other people on the channel. And that was probably one of the most touching comments that we ever got, because it kind of gave an idea of how much this channel meant to some people out there who are watching it. So that would be my answer to that question. That would be the not really the comment that made me feel the happiest, but it made what we do feel really worthwhile, like it had a purpose, and also the worst comments, both at the same time. But still, an unfortunate thing about CME for PC, because everyone who's been here for a long time, the old guards know him, because CME for PC was also an old guard as well. Kind of while he was around and alive, he was pretty much a very similar kind of a rock and foundation of the LCA community, because he was around so much, a lot like BC Skyman is today. Because BC Skyman was also around, or has been around as long as CME for PC was. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can, in my opinion, or not really in my opinion, the best I can from what I've remembered and recalled from running the show. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to make it possible well on into the future, where we can continue to make both good and sad memories with the entirety of the LSA, kind of like those. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I see people asking me in the chat if I have any more news about the DC situation. Sadly, I don't. I've been looking around trying to spot some, but I don't have any more new information to give you all. So I have to keep an eye out and see if I can spot that. But I'll tell you what, like I didn't mention this until this point on the stream. I actually underwent dental surgery today in midday. I had got a root canal done, a pretty bad one. It went fine and everything, but for whatever reason, it is making me feel like I have no red blood cells left in my body right now. Like I am like weak as a dog right now. I don't know why. I'm sitting here like I can barely feel like I want to lift my arms up to like type right now for whatever reason. It's the weirdest feeling ever. Just complete like no energy at all. Like I'm telling you, he's got no energy. He's got no energy. I really feel like that. I have no idea why I'm feeling like that either. But very interesting stuff. But yeah, if you're noticing I'm a little bit more quiet than usual, that is why. For some reason, it's putting me down quite a bit. I think the stress of it might have put me down. But anyways, moving into our next super chat here. This one goes to none other than Duncan VR, another channel legend from Australia, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. He said, Baba, Mu, Inshallah, Sinwar, Inshallah, Bush Baba, Enforcer, sir, get your hands off my Sinwar. How dare you, sir, Baba, quack. North Korean ships, auto sink. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oink, oink. Little Rocket Man, oink, oink, Baba.
You know, if that ship had been built by Boeing when it was falling off of that slipway, it would have gone, whoop, whoop, don't sink. Whoop, whoop, don't sink. Like, it would have been saying that while it's going under. But I gotta say, it's not a LSA night without Duncan VR throwing in the animal noises. I gotta thank you for being here tonight, Duncan VR, because we love the animal noises. Matthew and me love them. And while Matthew's feeling like a real animal today after going through a root canal, which I've never had to go through, so I don't know what a root canal involves or anything. But I gotta say, I gotta thank you for being here tonight and giving a little bit of comedic brevity, Duncan VR, to a day that has been exhausting for some and rejuvenating for others. Matthew's extremely exhausted tonight, and I'm pretty much hyper in energy today, which is actually a little bit rare because recently I've been feeling really low on energy because I've either been getting no sleep or I get way too much sleep, and either one of them actually just completely destroys my energy level. So today I got the perfect amount of sleep. I feel great, just like the olden times, and it's made me feel alive again. So while Matthew's feeling exhausted, I'm at my prime right now. I'm at the peak of my energy. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for always being here at Duncan VR and throwing in that support and helping the channel to keep on running and throwing in those animal noises, because it has always been a mainstay of the channel's super chat segments, and we'd love to hear it again tonight. And so a big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to John Brewer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, John Brewer, as well for that support. And we do appreciate that very much. And John said, are there any polls that reflect the U.S. public opinion on the Ukraine policy in the United States right now? Because I've not seen any.
We've seen some in the past, and there's actually a decent amount of people in America who are in support of helping out Ukraine. It's just that none of those polls have been run recently. I don't know why, but I still feel like supporting Ukraine is a fairly popular thing in public opinion here in the United States. I don't really think that's changing too much, because it doesn't seem to me that there's been much of a public change in opinion on it. There has been a lot of people who've really stopped paying attention to it on a day-to-day basis because it's pretty much become background noise because it's been going on for so long. But outside of that, I would have to generally believe that there's still a decent amount of public support behind it, at least from what I can tell. I mean, there's a lot of people who are here every night, and some people make it a really big thing that they don't like that we're covering world news because they're only here for Ukraine. And while those people, to be honest, are actually getting in a smaller and smaller minority these days because most of our community actually is here for pretty much world news as a whole, it is something that is interesting to note and is showing that there's still a strong amount of support in the United States for the Ukrainian nation and their plight of having to defend their sovereignty against the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one goes to Stephen Waters, who puts in a $40 donation in total. And thank you very much, Stephen, for the 40.
Hey!
And we do appreciate that. And he said, are U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine? And when and how might they be?
U.S. troops are not in the ground on the ground in Ukraine right now. There are some U.S. Department of Defense personnel, which is pretty much the military, but they are in an advisory role inside of Ukraine and really only deal with the higher levels of the Ukrainian government as a form of a foreign liaison of a sort for the United States. There isn't really a lot of on-the-ground troop involvement, if that really is the question that we're asking. If you're asking, are there U.S. soldiers in Ukraine? Technically there is, but they're not in any kind of a combatant role, and they're specifically in an advisory role, and most of them are in Kyiv or often Lviv in western Ukraine. As far as U.S. troops getting involved in the ground, if we're working off of what would be a realistic scenario, if the Russian Federation continued to break the attempts at making a peace or a ceasefire with the Ukrainians, and we started to support the Ukrainians militarily and also started to provide them with more intelligence and more funding, the Russian Federation could see the United States get involved in the war if they did something like possibly use a nuclear weapon or use chemical or biological agents, or maybe even start a larger war with NATO. That would most likely be some of the things that would kick off direct U.S. ground involvement in armed force inside of Ukraine. That would at least be my belief at the moment if we were working off of a practical kind of scenario. But once again, considering the unpredictable nature of the U.S. government currently, there is a decent likelihood that might not be an actual accurate prediction. But that would be the best guess I could give you at the moment. And so I thank you so much for the support, helping this channel to keep running. And I hope I answered that question to the greatest of my abilities that is possibly inherent in man. And I thank you greatly for that support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that answered that question quite well. And thank you for the massive support, by the way, because you're helping this channel to keep rolling each and every night. And Matthew and me are massively appreciative of your support. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Rye Guy SR, another channel legend who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that support. He said, good evening, enforcers. I missed a lot of lives lately, but the streams have been great. And a few bucks for a North Korean ship repair fund. They're going to need help. They're going to need the help and take one from the chat. And 3 Bobcats, 2 days, LLT, LSA, and long live the Republic.
And long live the Republic, and long live the Lee Spring Army, Rye Guy Sr. And I gotta say, I hate that you missed a lot of live streams. I hate that. I hate to hear that. But I'm glad to hear that you are watching them still, and I thank you for saying that they're great. We're trying our best around here to make sure that they're well information balanced, humor balanced, all that sort of thing, to make sure that it's as good as we can possibly make it. And I feel like it's doing pretty good, because tonight we had a massive viewership. We had 11.4 thousand people here at the peak, as the YouTube control room just crapped itself and died, of course, right when I look at it, and right when I'm trying to get the numbers off of it. So let me refresh it here, folks. Sorry about that. And also sorry about that, Rye Guy Sr., because I was in the middle of addressing your super chat when the YouTube control room so rudely did this. Let me show y'all what it does. It just does that in the middle of the streams these days. It's just really aggravating, because it's the only way that I can actually try and read the live chat or super chats at all, and they just keep doing, like, it does that like 7 times a night nowadays. It's really annoying. But anyways,
I analyzed the page, and it shows over like the course of 30 to 40 minutes, it goes from using about 400 megabytes of memory to about 2 or 3 gigabytes. And then once it reaches a threshold beyond that, then the page crashes. It uses too much memory. I think that's technically known as a memory leak. And for whatever reason, it's been like that for a long time, and YouTube's never addressed it, which is really troublesome. Because if you run live streams like we do, you have to keep that open, and it won't stay open because of the memory leak.
yeah, it's incredibly annoying. It's just so freaking annoying. But beyond that, getting back to what you were saying, Rye Guy, I would have to thank you for the support to the North Korean ship repair fund, because I would rather have that money than the North Koreans. The North Koreans wouldn't do anything good with that. They would repair a ship that would be used to threaten and jeopardize the security of the United States. So if anyone ever wants to send funds to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to repair their ship, y'all can just send it to us instead, and we'll use it for pro-American and pro-Western things instead, which I think is a much better use of the money. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to talk about those 3 Bobcats in the 2 days that we've been here on air. And of course, massive thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and being a legend of the stream, Rye Guy Sr., because you've been around for quite some time. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, people are asking a ton of questions about the root canal. Someone said, "Did Matthew get his first root canal?" Yeah, that was my first one today. I've never had to have a root canal before. Honestly, I was kind of anxious for it because I was like, I've heard some really bad things about root canals. I was like, oh Lord, hopefully it doesn't have a lot of pain with it because I've heard people say, oh, that's the worst thing you can get. I was like, oh, that's not good. So I had to get it. I went there today to go get it. And I showed up and I was like, hey, do y'all have anything to like really knock me out good or something? Because I'm really kind of like freaked out about this whole thing and I don't want to have any pain. So can you knock me out? So they said, oh, yeah, sure. So they held up this mask and said, we do have nitrous. I was like, nitrous? I was like, I'll have some. Like, give me some. I'll definitely need that to try to knock me out. So I'm not nervous of this whole thing. So I got that. That took like a solid 10 minutes to set in to actually work right because apparently my adrenaline was going pretty good. So it took 10 minutes for it to set in. But once it did, though, I was good. And also I had to get all the Novocaine and all that junk that goes with it. Honestly, the root canal was not painful. If you're having to ever get one, it wasn't bad at all. I could barely feel a thing. It was just a little bit of pressure. It wasn't like the horror stories at all. But the main thing is, though, I got up from the chair and instantly I was like, oh, crap. Like, I feel like I'm totally looped out of my mind, out of it. And I feel like I'm not like a hot dog man type person where I go around getting high, but I felt stoned for the first time ever. And I was like, oh, this is an interesting feeling right here. But I walked it off and then I catch up to right now, a few hours down the road, and it's starting to catch up to me. I'm feeling sore in the mouth. I feel exhausted, like I feel like a dead man walking right now for whatever reason. So I'm hanging in there, but I'm doing pretty good now. But hopefully it stays that way. But anyways, enough of that talk. And on to our next super chat. And this one is going to go to none other than Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that 15. And we do appreciate that. And Margaret said, always listening and live chat question, please.
And I gotta thank you, Margaret Hemsley, for always listening from Western Australia. We always love to know that you're here, Margaret Hemsley. And I gotta thank you for being one of our Australian viewers. And I gotta thank you for always watching and always listening. And we're happy to know that folks who have become the global lacus are still here with us, although they don't talk a great deal. I'm still happy to hear that you're here tonight and watching, and I gotta thank you massively for that support. And we will make sure to grab a live chat in your honor, Margaret. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question goes to Destiny Edgington, who said, have you heard about the wildfires near Moscow?
I haven't really talked about them a lot or really looked at them much. I have heard about the ongoing wildfires, but it hasn't really crossed my radar too much. If it starts causing significant damage, then it would, but from what we're hearing, there are wildfires in the area of Moscow, but they're not causing extremely serious damage. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. Thank you for sponsoring that live chat, though, Margaret Hemsley, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality, like I'm always saying. So with that, we are on to the next one. Also, I see some people saying, that is laughing gas for you. Oh, I've been on laughing gas before. Is that what nitrous is? Is that laughing gas?
Yeah, it's just nitrous oxide mixed with oxygen. They put it through a mask. I think they turned it up to the like highest setting they possibly could safely, like to put me down, as they saw I was like a little bit anxious about it. So they turned it up to the pretty high setting. It still took 10 minutes for it to set in, even after that. So I was like, that's kind of interesting. I thought for a minute I was going to be immune to it. I was like, that's not good. Hopefully it works. And when it finally did work after 10 minutes, it had me like zonked. Like I was looped out of my mind after that, which I was very thankful for because I didn't want to be too awake during the whole thing. It was just a lot of drilling noises and a lot of poking and prodding. All you felt was pressure, though. It's not like you actually felt pain or anything. And I'll spare everybody the details of the whole root canal procedure. It's kind of a little graphic, but no, not too bad. Like I thought it was going to be much worse than that. I've heard like horror stories of people saying they could feel the burning. They could feel like the worst pain in their life. Thankfully, it wasn't like that for me at all. I think I had a really good endodontist, thankfully.
I think I've been on laughing gas before. I don't like how it smells, man. Like when you're breathing it in, like something is weird
There's
about
that sweet
that.
smell. It's like that like metallic sweet smell. It's hard to describe it, but it's definitely odd.
Yeah, I don't like the smell of that stuff, man. It just weirds me out because it does smell like a sweet metallic kind of a thing. Like the best way to explain it, man, like if I had to describe the smell, it's like that Star Trek episode, man, where there was like the cloud on that planet. It's like sucking the blood out of people. And Kirk is like, it has that sweet metal smell to it, like blood. Like it's kind of like that. Like if I had to describe anything that would be close to that, I don't like that. Like the way it smells. I don't trust the smell of that stuff. It seems odd to me. But it
I was
works.
thankful for it. I didn't care how to smell, to be honest. I was like, just put me down, please put me down. I was like, I'll take anything. Just put me down and out.
I
I mean,
mean,
I really overreacted though. Like I was really overreacting because it wasn't bad. But what were you about to say?
when it puts you down, I can do that for free. I'm just playing.
No, not permanently. I was like, I need a temporary putting down. Also, by the way, someone mentioned. Also, they said, "Thank you, Matt, for addressing my fears with the sedation about the being put under." Now that I've never been put under all the way, like general anesthesia, that's something I also have a bit of a concern with myself. I'm not a big fan of sedation in general, to be honest. But when I get nervous enough, I'm like, okay, I can deal with a little bit of sedation now. But I've always been a little apprehensive to go fully under, like general anesthesia. I've never had to do that, thankfully. And I can understand why somebody would be afraid to go into surgery just for that reason, because it's like you go under completely, you lose all track of time, you lose track of everything, you have amnesia, you forget, and you obviously want to forget because you don't want to feel the pain. But then you wake up, and it's like if you're having a risky surgery, it's like a question of whether you're going to wake up or not, and you never really know. Which is always sketchy to me. But just the whole, I don't even want to talk about it. Like every time I talk about it, it gets me queasy feeling and like I'm gonna like lose it. Like the whole IV thing, I just don't like it. I don't like that at all.
Well, you know what's interesting, actually, this might be a little bit morbid to people, but I do this stuff sometimes in my free time, especially considering that we talk about war a great deal, is that recently I was actually looking into the reburial of German soldiers from World War II that were buried in like mass graves near field hospitals and stuff like that in places like Poland and the Czech Republic and Slovakia and such. And one thing that was really interesting to me, speaking about dental care, is that the existence of dental care in Germany in the 1930s and 40s had to have been non-existent because the quality of these corpses' teeth was abysmally. By the way, folks, these corpses or the remains were skeletal at that point. There was no actual fleshy remains or really um, any meaty remains. None of that was around. That was all gone. And also all the clothes had deteriorated and everything. It was quite literally just skeletons. But it was very interesting to look at their dental their dental state because it was terrible, man. Like you know when they do the root canals, like they just drill through the inside of your tooth, and a lot of their teeth looked like that just from the cavities. Like the cavities actually would eat their teeth from the inside out, and so there would just be this giant abscess in some of their teeth. And I was like, dang, I was like considering that none of them had access to modern dental care, that had to have been pretty painful a good amount of the time, or they had really cheap dental fixes that didn't really fix much of the issue, but at least remove the pain, I'm supposing. But the dental state was just, it was horrendous. I don't know what it was
Wait,
like in the United States or Britain or other countries during that time, but Germany had apparently bad dental care.
well, another crazy thing is I actually read up on it after the fact, after I got off the nitrous. Also, by the way, I have no idea how somebody can get addicted to that. Like after I was on that today and got off of it, I'm like, okay, that was great for the dental procedure, but I wouldn't want to just have that again. Just if I had to avoid it, I would definitely avoid it because I don't like that kind of stuff. But some people claim they get addicted to it. So I'm like, this is sort of like, it is what it is. But at the same time, though, what's interesting is how it was discovered. It was actually invented by, I believe, a chemist. And the chemist would actually hold parties where they would actually give each other nitrous oxide, like in those balloons, like the stoners like to do. They'll get nitrous in a balloon and give it to people and stuff like that, and they'll actually sell it sometimes on the street. We saw that in London quite a bit when we were there one time. There's all those balloons all over the street, and that was nitrous that they were throwing on the side of the road. But the weird thing was the scientist guy actually invented it. He started giving it to his friends and stuff like that at parties. They realized it had good sedation effects. And then the medical industry picked it up and realized, oh, look, that's really good between putting someone fully under and keeping someone awake. That's like a good in between. So they started using it for medical purposes. And then the dentist industry started using it. And that's how we have it today.
It's actually really interesting, man, how general anesthetics came around because they actually came around right in time for the U.S. Civil War, like right beforehand, and I think it actually was created here in the United States, if I'm remembering the gist of the story correctly. So general anesthesia in some rare instances was actually used for some of the first times in America during the U.S. Civil War, although generally it wasn't used often because it was quite expensive at the time. It was new, it was experimental, they really didn't know how to use it incredibly well, and also battlefield surgeries were quite literally dangerous, life-saving emergencies that had to be done at that moment, and so most of the time they couldn't even wait for general anesthesia, and also germ theory didn't exist. There was a whole bunch of different things medically during the Civil War that don't exist today, like the idea of germ theory simply didn't exist in. But a really interesting, also I saw some people saying, oh man, dental stuff scares me. I wouldn't be that scared about it. I would actually be very forward in supporting and liking dental care and really anything done with teeth, because interestingly enough, teeth are some of the places, your mouth is one of the places where things can go wrong, and if they go wrong, it gets bad quick, because your teeth, or largely most of what's in your mouth, is actually almost directly connected to your brain in the nervous system. It's not like your arms, legs, or other appendages, or even your torso, where there's a decent amount of distance between some sort of an infection there in your brain. Any infections that happen in the mouth, it can actually directly affect the health of your neurological systems in your brain directly, because the nervous system's path to the brain from your teeth, or largely from your mouth, is the shortest than any other part in your body. So dental care is one of the most important kinds of care to actually have in the bigger sense of things, beyond just generally being healthy and dealing with larger life-threatening circumstances outside of your teeth. So like once I started learning about that, I was like, man, that's why I'm big on brushing my teeth and just taking care of them to the utmost. And so usually whenever I go into the dentist, they're like, man, this is perfect. Like, your gums are healthy, your teeth are clean. I'm so into it. I brush my teeth in the morning for like 5 minutes, and I'll like brush the back of my teeth, the front of my teeth, the gum line, the top, like everything. Like some people only do the front, and some people don't do the gums, like the place where your teeth meet the gums. But I do all of it because it's very important to make sure that that kind of stuff remains healthy and as good off as it can be. Because from what I understand, dental, if you get an infection in your mouth or anywhere around your teeth, it is horrendous. So I'm like, if any kind of thing I'm behind health wise, doing it just proactively, it's anything to do with teeth. But anyways,
I just hate it when you go to the dentist to like get issues dealt with, like to go for cleaning and stuff like that, and they get that metal pick out and they jab it into your gums and stuff and like scrape your gums, and then your gums start naturally bleeding from that, and they're like, "Are you flossing? Because it looks like there's some problems here." It's like, you just like jab my gum with like a freaking knife. It's like, why do you think it's bleeding? It's like probably you jabbed it and scraped it with that sharp metal tool you've got. But yeah, that's the part I hate about the dentist, is going there and just having like the scraping and all that stuff done. I can't stand that. Like, it's just, honestly, it makes me not want to go to the dentist, is all that scraping.
You know what's crazy, man, is that I brush my gums so freaking much. The last time I went to the dentist and they did that, I don't think I bled. Like, I don't think I bled at all. So they were like, wow, your gums are really healthy. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, no way. So they're not actually supposed to bleed, because if you brush them hard enough and well enough, apparently they just strengthen up enough to where when they poke it like that, they don't bleed. Because mine didn't bleed, and they were like, wow, your gums are in great shape. And I was like, that was it the whole time. It's like a really specific kind of thing. Like, you have to like really think about it to make sure that you're brushing directly on like the gum tooth line, because I always brush a little high, like back in the day. So I always brushed on the teeth and not on the gum tooth line. But they told me that brushing on the gum and tooth line is actually the most important area, because that's where things can get settled between your tooth and gums and start causing cavities and other kinds of things to form. So you want to brush there more than anything. So I started doing that. And I've been doing that for like, and I got to say this, folks, I wasn't really told this a lot growing up, so I've only been doing that for about the past year and a half, and my gums are like iron at this point. Like, if someone shot a bullet at them, I think the gums themselves, from the strength of them, could deflect the bullet, because like, they're brushing them that hard, they just don't bleed anymore for some reason. They get pretty strong. But anyways,
you're not actually supposed to do that. You're not supposed to brush too hard. You can cause damage that way as well.
Oh, well, I mean, I haven't had any damage yet. They always say my teeth are spotless. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm brushing them just enough. Maybe too much. We'll find out one day. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Kim Jung Un, also known as General
No
Leslie
way!
Cole, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Kim Jong Un, for that support. They said, don't listen to this propaganda.
Of course, my great leader Kim Jung Un, the great sun face leader. They call him the sun face because his face is round because of how fat he is. But beyond that, I do have to thank you for the support, and do not believe the propaganda, folks. The North Korean state media didn't put out any publications. It's all lies. And for official reasons, I have to say that that's a joke. The information that we did put out is true, because if we say that and then we get flagged and we don't correct that, YouTube actually will come and probably get us for disinformation, which we did recover the story, and it was reported by North Korean state media, so by all accounts that story is 100% verifiably true. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running, and we wouldn't be able to have a good joke, because naming yourself Kim Jung Un was a pretty good one. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Alaska, who puts in a $10 support. And thank you very much, Alaska, for that support. They said, I'm laughing so much, LOL.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you're laughing a great deal. We love to make people laugh around here. Some people like the humor, some people don't. And some people say that the humor is the worst. And I'm like, if it was, we wouldn't be successful. It's like 11.4 thousand people here at the peak. I would call that being successful. So those people are just haters. And I got to thank you for appreciating the stream. I got to thank you for laughing through it and enjoying it enough that you'd support it, so that way we can make sure to keep having smiles for miles. Like Matthew's teeth today. It bling, you know, like when you smile and it makes that blinging noise in the movie to make sure that they emphasize that you smile. But beyond that,
oh yeah, and the toothpaste commercials too. You know, another thing that's like really sucks as well. I just remembered this in my head about the dentist. Those stupid X-ray things they put in your mouth. Y'all know those little bite wing things? It's like the thing they're like, oh, open up right here and bite down on this, and they'll like jab it right into the back of your mouth. It's like, those do me bad. Like I don't do well with those at all. Like it's like the left side for me messes me up. It's like, y'all better hurry up and take this X-ray, because I'm about to like choke this thing back up in a minute really badly. And it's like they never seem to like move very fast when it comes to those things. There they are, those things right there. I can't stand those. They make me gag so bad. Like that really just messes me up. That's the worst. That might be the worst part of the dentist for me, is that stupid bite wing thing.
Also, what was up with this person? Oh, I think that's a baby's teeth, because that's like the
holy cow.
That's like that's the jaw of a baby. That's not a normal like adult jaw. I was about to be like, what the hell's going on with that? Like, but it's a baby, so that makes sense. But these X-rays are always interesting to me, because every single time I see the same thing, and they'll like, the dentist will always come in and they'll look at it and be like, yes, all right. Yeah, there's actually a problem right there. And I'm like, where do y'all see that? Like, I'm like, I just don't know how they see it. I wish they would explain, because sometimes I'll ask, I'll like, what are you really seeing? And then they'll explain it, and I still don't see it. So like,
I saw it. They pointed to my back tooth where I had to have the root canal done, and showed me an X-ray look like that one. And it literally, like at the top part of the tooth, it was like, you see how the root is like dark right there in the middle of the tooth. You see the root in the middle?
Yeah.
It was dark like that on the left side, entire left side mass of the tooth. And they were like, that right there is a very deep cavity that's gotten down to the nerve of the tooth, which means you have to have a root canal. I was like, oh, great. I was like, and then I didn't know anything about them at that point. I was like, just like going into full panic mode at that point. Like, oh crap, this is going to be the most painful thing I've ever endured. But it turned out to be perfectly good.
Man, that's actually pretty wild right there. And it was a cavity inside of the tooth that didn't like break the surface.
Yeah, it's a root canal is basically just a really deep cavity when you need a root canal. It's basically you've infected the pulp of the tooth at that point, because the infection has gotten so deep, and a cavity is an infection. So if you have a cavity at the top part of a tooth, you can usually just get a filling for that, which is a normal cavity treatment. If it goes as deep as the pulp, then you have to get a root canal, which is a lot more involved.
That's interesting. Let's see if we can get a X-ray bite wing of a. Would it just be called a root canal?
Yeah, you can say root canal. It'll probably show you.
Oh, like that?
Yeah, exactly like that. It looked like that in the X-ray.
But you know, whenever I go in there, man, they'll say something about some tooth somewhere. Like, I remember back in the day, they were like, oh, you have a cavity. I never saw this stuff. They would point it out to me, and like all of the teeth would look the same. And I always was, like, at least to me, and I guess maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, or I just didn't really have a good trained eye for it. But I was always like, oh, where in the world is that? You know, it's like I don't see what they're talking about. But that right there is quite obvious. Like there's something wrong there. But what else other kinds of interesting tooth things? I always get interested. Let's see. I don't know what those are. I guess that's pointing out possibly.
if they're making a point of the separation between the teeth, that means my entire mouth has a problem. So it's like, I don't think there's any problem with that. If I'm not a dentist.
I think it's that little light gray area right there in between the teeth, because you don't see that. Well,
Maybe
you
that
actually
is a cavity.
maybe I don't really know what they're pointing out there on that one. This kind of stuff is interesting though. I always find everything interesting. I always have a little bit of interest for everything.
There's the click on that one right there. Your mouse cursor's on right
This
there
one?
in the middle. Yeah, that one. See the wisdom teeth in the very back. You can see there's the top wisdom teeth back there. It looks like, I can't tell if they've had the back right side removed or not, but that's a tough one right there. I've been harassed for, I think, like a decade about having my wisdom teeth removed like that. Mine are as impacted as those right there, if not a little bit worse. I've just never fooled with it because I don't want to get put under. That's the part of the reason why I don't want to get it done. It's never caused problems, no pain, so I'm just leaving it alone.
And also, there's a nerve wrapped around one of them. So to get it out, they might
the jaw nerve.
They might sever the nerve, and half of his face is like paralyzed or goes numb. So that's also another reason why he doesn't want to touch it. That's not a problem of mine. I could have mine removed easily. Matthew couldn't. But I still don't want mine removed because I don't want to go under general anesthesia either. That's kind of it. Also, Matthew, did you know that if an adult tooth falls out, the jawbone below that just starts to slowly dissolve?
Yeah, I did know that actually.
Yeah,
but
that's
the interesting thing is there is one, to my understanding, the way it was explained to me, the jaw, there is one nerve that goes literally below the root of the teeth, or sort of adjacent to the teeth, that goes all around the bottom jaw. And that's the nerve that specifically can get very close to the wisdom teeth. So if they go to extract the wisdom teeth, and that obviously the nerve's right below or right next to the root of the tooth, to my understanding, might be a very primitive explanation of it. Like you said, they can accidentally nick that, and then you lose sensation in part of your jaw, or at least you get a lot of sensation reduced as a result of that, or at least that's what I was told. So, I don't want that, because that might actually end my YouTube career if that happens. I might not be able to talk the same way anymore. I'll be curious. That's one question I need to ask at some point. It's like, if I ever have to have that done and it goes wrong, it's like, am I going to not be able to talk right from that point forward, or what? Because that could be career ending in like pretty much every way possible if that turns out like that.
Yeah, you might just have to keep them around. I mean, honestly, man, another thing that I'm scared of is that if we get rid of our wisdom teeth, I don't think we're going to be as wise as we are on stream anymore. We're going to be pretty damn stupid. So I think we have to keep them for that as well, Like, they're wisdom teeth for a reason, right?
Yeah, what real wisdom? The wisdom is just leave them in your mouth. That's the wisdom.
Just if they ain't making a problem, leave them be. That's what they say, right? That's the old saying. But beyond that, it is time for us to get past the dental talk and get on into some more fun super chats, and eventually get to the live chats. But let's see here. Someone said you'll get a Canadian accent, eh? I wouldn't get a Canadian accent, eh? And let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Someone said something interesting earlier. Oh, a lot of people are like, this is painful to watch, or I hate this dental talk. It's interesting how people are scared of like anything to do with the teeth. Because I actually was like that a while ago. I was like many people in the chat. I was very scared of stuff to deal with the teeth until I started to learn the medical importance of keeping your teeth healthy, or really just kind of dealing with everything proactively there. Because it's one of the most important things. It really is the only thing, at least in my opinion, health-wise, that I would go out of my way to deal with proactively beyond the wisdom teeth. Like, if it's anything else that isn't wisdom teeth, I'll try and go and take care of it immediately.
Man, I tend to it all right. Like, I'll schedule appointments, like root canal appointment, cleaning appointment. I'll be so like, I'll be like, oh, no big deal. Like, I'll just tend to it when it comes up. But every single time, like, I'm like perfectly confident up till the day of. Then when the day of hits, like, actually go get the root canal or something like that, I start shaking and shivering, and I start like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I just walked myself into this. And I'll feel like that all day long until it's finally over with. And sometimes I've had bad experiences at the dentist. I remember I had to have a permanent tooth pulled one time when I had braces. And I'm not sure if the dentist knew what he was doing or not, but I got the Novocaine for numbing the mouth. I got the nitrous. But at the same time, it didn't fully get rid of the feeling I was feeling. And the guy was fighting that permanent tooth like he was fighting a wild dog. And he literally told me at the end of it, said some grown men would have cried through that, but somehow you didn't. So good on you. I was like, well, thank you for that, I guess. But it was painful. I mean, it was extremely painful, actually. That was probably one of the worst pain I've ever had in any medical procedure, was trying to get that one tooth pulled. It was not tough. I wouldn't want to go
Dude,
through that again. Luckily,
you went to like Dr. Jekyll and Hyde's place, didn't you, to get your tooth removed then, right?
yeah, I guess so. That dude was fighting it too. It was like almost a horror movie. It felt like. Luckily, it hasn't been like that since.
You know when I got all of my teeth pulled, like you're talking about getting teeth pulled for your for what was it, the braces, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I got my teeth pulled, I didn't get my teeth pulled at Matthew's Jekyll and Hyde place. I got my teeth pulled at a different dentist, and they used some really weird technique. Remember I told you about it, Matthew, where they like had like a vice, like they put a vice on my gums. And so like to explain this to y'all, because this is really like this is bizarre and it still freaks me out to this day. But they had a vice that they would put on my gum, and the vice would just
Graphic
start.
warning, by the way. Graphic warning. This is the people that are like queasy. This is very graphic.
Yeah, this might be a little bit graphic. I don't really get bothered by much, folks, because I just watch nothing but gore. It's a part of my job every day. It's a part of Matthew's job, too, in a sense, so I don't really get freaked out about much anymore. But this is graphic. Just putting that out there again, so if you don't want to hear it, you might not want to. But they put a vice on pretty much my gum, and it would slowly start applying more and more pressure until eventually the tooth literally just shot out of its socket like a rocket. And it would literally, like, the first one that was pulled out like that, well, really just popped out. The pressure got immense until finally you just heard pop, and the tooth shot up with such strength and speed. It hit the top, my top row of teeth at the top of my mouth, bounced off of those, hit the other side of my mouth, and then landed on my tongue, and I could feel it like spin twice on my tongue. And then they went, "Oh, there we go, we got it," and they just pulled it right out. And they're like, "There we go, it's done." They were like, "All right, we're going to move on to the second one." And then they did the second one just like that. It almost did the exact same thing. Honestly, a lot better than what you went through with someone just literally getting a plier and trying to rip it out of your mouth. It was a lot easier. It didn't feel bad. It really didn't hurt. But it still was a really bizarre feeling to feel one of your teeth pop right out of your gum and then shoot around your mouth. Like that was a really bizarre kind
Too
of
much
thing.
info. Too much info.
I'm just sharing that with the folks. So that way, if you're a little bit queasy about that kind of stuff, hopefully that's not, hopefully that alleviates some fears, maybe sharing a story like that. I don't know. But with that, we are on to the next questions.
All right. So moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Danny B, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Danny, for that support. And it's good to see you once again. And he said, "Good evening, forces. Chef Danny here. And I hope all is well with y'all. And I had a long day, and I did catering for a graduation party and had to clock in at the social house, and a good long 14-hour day. And I'll say,
dang, a 14-hour day. Jeez, that's a long day right there, Danny B. I bet that was hard-earned money at the end of the day, too, after working a straight 14 hours. But I hope you've been having a good time, Danny B. We haven't heard from you for a little bit. And I got to say, that had to have been a long day. That was a freaking long day, a 14-hour workday. But a catering for a graduation party sounds pretty fun. Matthew and me never had a graduation party. We kind of missed out on that fun. We didn't have one for high school, and we didn't have one for college either. We just, got our diplomas and then moved on, which is kind of a shame. We never really felt like we kind of achieved anything. It was just kind of like, oh, that's over, and then we just moved on to something else. But I gotta say, that had to have been a fun one to be at, Danny, but I'm sure it was very festive and fun to be there at that, and also to work 14 hours in a day. I could tell you had to have a long day. You got to be exhausted at this point. But I got to thank you for being here, Danny, and I got to thank you for supporting this channel and helping you to keep on rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be around to hear about your impressive, honestly, wildly impressive catering exploits. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And thank you for being here tonight and sharing that with us, because I'm sure a lot of people can give you a high five for working 14 hours, because that is a long day right there. And I'm sure you're going to want a lot of sleep after that one. But with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one, but a big thanks to you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here and keep this thing rolling. And also, John, I saw you earlier say this. I kind of ignored it because I thought you'd stop. Matthew addressed it. What does this have to do with North Korea? And then you said how much money to get to the war news. At this point, you couldn't pay any amount of money because it's over. We do that for free, and we did it for free for the first hour and 40 minutes of the show. So if you would like to watch that, you can just rewind, because we're not going to restart the whole news segment here and do it again, because there has to be an end to the news. Like, there's only so much news in a day, and this isn't CNN where we just run the same stories in a loop every hour for 24 hours. So if you want to watch it, you can just rewind. That's probably the easiest thing for you and the easiest thing for me. I don't have to go through a whole other hour and a half of the same news, and you don't have to listen to us ramble here in the question segment. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next super chat, and once again, big thanks to Danny for that support. Our next one here goes to Turbo Divergent, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Turbo, for that $10 support. And they said, while this is supposed to be apolitical, I believe inevitably become extremely political. And do you foresee a time where this channel turns more towards politics than overseas coverage?
And I thank you for the support, Turbo Divergent. And I got to say that I really can't, because it's I'm all behind becoming the president of the United States in 2040, and I would love to do that. But the reality is that I don't want to make this channel a political one ever, because it is a cesspit. Politics is. I don't really like it much. The only reason I want to get involved in politics is because I actually want to try and do something that will benefit the country. I'm not doing it for the love of the game or anything like that. I want to become the president of the United States in 2040 because I actually want to change the country. And as soon as I get that done, I'm gone. I don't want to be there in the Senate for 40 years. I don't want to be trying to, be the president for 2 terms just to say that I'm the president for 2 whole terms. It's really just about trying to make an impact and change things for the better for the citizens, and then go back to being a citizen. That's what I would want to do. I don't really like politics, of course, because of that reason. I just want to get in to try and do things that I think would benefit everyone and then leave. I'm not really there because I like politics or I like the Republicans or I like the Democrats. It would just be there for that one goal, that one purpose, and then I'd leave. And so I could never really see this channel becoming political because politics wears me down. Like the truth of the matter is that, like, I'll speak honestly with y'all, like I always try and do, and some people don't like it when I do that. I'm still gonna do it because I'm not gonna lie to y'all, and I'm not gonna try and pretend like I'm someone I'm not. I don't really get party policies of either party these days. I really do not. None of it's really grounded in reality, at least in my opinion. A lot of it is in a fictional land that largely has to do with moral issues, which I don't really think the federal government has a responsibility in legislating. I think that that's largely a state-to-state responsibility in the modern day to legislate a lot of these moral issues that people find. Like, for example, the really big ones that both parties focus on heavily and have completely different opinions, this gun control and abortion. I don't really know why the federal government is trying to get involved in that argument and set a standard for the whole country when we could easily start to remove this unnecessary debate topic from the federal government's purview and move it back down to the state level, where if the state of California wants to restrict gun ownership heavily and that's what the citizens of California want, they can do that. If the state of Alabama wants the opposite, they can do that as well, and everything's fine. It's a laissez-faire system. People can do what they want, and if that's what the citizens in the majority of a state want, they can have it. The federal government needs to be primarily focused, and the major political parties in the United States on both ends, I think, should be more so focused on the federal level on ensuring the prosperity and well-being of the citizenry at large. We really shouldn't be concerned at a federal level about if someone can have an abortion or not, or what kind of guns can someone own or not, when people are hardly able to afford groceries right now and people aren't really able to get well-paying jobs. There are a lot more pressing issues out there right now, in my opinion, that are more pressing than moral issues. Moral issues are something that the moral issues are just something that the federal government, I don't believe, is supposed to be focused on ever. That's more so of a self-aspiration goal that should be at the or a ego goal of the states for people to decide down there. The federal government should just be trying to ensure a baseline prosperity for everyone in the country, and then leave those decisions to the people in each and every state. So that way they get to kind of have it their way for the large part. That's what I believe. Generally, just to be honest with y'all, that's actually what a classic Republican would say from like the 60s and the 70s, not even the Republican Party of the modern day, because I really do think that a lot of those moralistic issues should just be the concern of the states, while the economic issues of interstate commerce should be the primary concern and issue of the federal government. And so far, neither party really aligns with my opinion on that in the modern day. Both of them have sidelined economic issues on the state and federal level entirely, to focus primarily on issues of morality, and I just don't really agree with that sort of a thing. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And right now, of course, the whole chat's getting flooded with political topics. Like people are saying it should be this way, it should be that way. That's up for the states to decide. Like I'm not trying to say that I have an opinion on that either. I'm trying to just say that the government right now at the federal level has its priorities in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And they shouldn't even be involved in those discussions in the first place. That should happen at the state level. The federal government needs to be involved in more pressing issues. We have a lot of pressing issues right now that is directly within the federal government's realm of control. Foreign policy issues are some of the top priorities of the federal government. Taxation issues at the federal level is at the top level. Like one thing that I'm actually a huge advocate of, which I'll say right now because I don't really think this is something that a lot of people talk about, is that I'm a huge advocate of lowering federal taxes but encouraging the states to increase their tax rates, because I think that right now, with how the system's running, considering that the federal government gets the lion's share of the tax revenue in this country, the federal government pretty much has the states under their control. It really isn't the United States of America, where states have the independence to create their own decisions and choose their own paths within a limited range. The federal government is able to pretty much block funding to states and pretty much force them to do something, which I find to be wildly unfair, because it's pretty much completely mooting any state legislator or state executive in the governor's office from actually being able to do anything that their citizenry and their specific state wants, because the federal government doesn't agree with them. They can just withhold funding and blocking categorical grants, and the states, because of their limited tax revenue, are not really able to work even semi-autonomously at that point. And I think that the tax codes in that way should be reworked, so that way there is actually an even balance, even economically, between the states and the federal government, so that way the federal government can't just go around stomping on the states and pretty much stomping on the rights that the states actually are supposed to have here in this country, to be able to make their own decisions, and sometimes dissent against the federal government, even if it's not within the purview or interest of one specific political party or the other. Those would kind of be the things that set me aside from the current kind of a political atmosphere in the country, where I wouldn't really want to become political, because no one really gets involved in those kinds of talks these days. Those are too meticulous. They're too focused on actual minutia of how the system runs and how to actually try and set it up to where it is fair to the states, to the federal government, to the citizens, and also actually working on achieving some sort of an actual aspiration where prosperity is assured, and it's not just a party slogan every 4 years. That's just something that no one's really interested in right now, and especially the folks out there that are involved in politics. I'm not really even speaking on the party policy level. I'm also speaking about the people who are generally involved in politics these days. It's a very emotionally driven thing. It's not rational in any way. A lot of the people who are heavily involved in politics don't think with a rational and discerning sense. They more so think on an emotional, animalistic level, and that's on all sides. Some people will say, like if you listen to a Republican, they'll say it's just the Democrats who are irrational, and if you listen to a Democrat, they'll say it's the Republicans who are irrational. As a third-party person here on the channel who has had to deal with both sides trying to attack us over the years, I would say that both of them are about as animalistic and irrational as each other with how they end up working. And so I don't really like that kind of stuff because it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me on my kind of level. So with that, I hope that addresses that well. But the answer to the question, in short, after going through that long spiel about all of the issues I would have with ever becoming political, is that I wouldn't really want to, because I find that kind of over emotional kind of a pathos appeal that is just dominating politics at this point. I find it to be very exhausting. I really can't handle it for long. Like whenever we see it come up in the stream for even 20 or 30 minutes, I'm absolutely spent after that, because I just cannot handle listening to people argue points that are entirely emotionally driven and are not driven by some sort of a more logical approach of trying to secure a betterment for the citizenry, rather than just do something because that's the way I want it and that's it. That's something I just can't really agree with. I'm just going to leave it there. I think that was a good way to end it. So with that, I thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. But if you like the way I talk and you like the way I think, vote for Enforcer for president in 2040, and you're not going to have any of the silliness stuff. I'm going to return boring to politics. It's going to be about business. It's not going to be about trying to be a reality TV show. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Bobby, who puts in a very generous $50 donation, one of the largest super chats of the night. And thank you very much, Bobby, for the 50
Hey!
Canadian and the super sticker of the YouTube creature riding off into the sunset on the firework. And we do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you for the massive support, Bobby, all the way from Canada, with the pair riding the rocket into the sun. And I gotta thank you massively for that huge support, because folks like you from around the world in the Lee Spring Army help this channel to be possible each and every day, and for us to make sure that pro-American and pro-Western interests are secured well into the future. I've got to thank you massively for that, because if it wasn't for you, once again, throwing in that support without a comment, we would never be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it rolling till this day. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a massive thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Joe Garrow, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Joe, as well. He said, I've been hanging out in Sumter, Oregon, and it has a pretty cool train and dredge situation going on in LT, LSA, and LSA WND.
Sumter, Oregon? And long live the Lee Spring Army, by the way. Let's go to Sumter, Oregon. Let's see. Is it spelled Sumter? There we go. Uh-huh. Oh, wait a minute. Hold up. What railroad is this? Let's see here. Where is it? There is the railroad right there, but where does it go? Where does it go? I don't see where it goes. What is this, though? Whose railroad? The Sumter Valley Railway. I've never heard of this railroad before. I thought I honestly was kind of like, is this the Cumbers and Toltec? But I think that's totally elsewhere. But look at that. They have a real running railroad. And it looks like some sort of an old, I can't tell what that is, actually. It's not a lumber mill, I don't think. But that is really cool. Oh, dang, look, they got a Heisler, I think is what that is. This is really neat, actually. And I got to say, really cool place. Thank you for pointing this out, and also really cool that you're there. Because I always am interested in this kind of stuff, especially like anything that's like a heritage railway or like a heritage museum of industry, stuff like that. I'm always really interested in this stuff. And it's a floating dredge. That is actually pretty cool, Matthew. Look, it's a giant dredge.
That is pretty neat. That's huge.
That thing's massive. It looks like they put it inside of a tiny pond, like, and they're just keeping it there. Where is that pond? Oh, there it is. It's the Sumter Valley Dredge, so it's actually like an attraction. That is really cool, actually. Oh, you can go in it. That is really neat. That is really cool, actually. What a neat little thing. But what is, so this is a Sumter Depot and gift shop. So this is a part of their railroad. That almost looks like an AI picture, honestly.
It kind of does. I don't know why, but it kind of looks like it.
Yeah, it kind of does. But I gotta say, this is really cool. I thank you for pointing this out to us and sharing this with us. I always like to look at this kind of stuff. But there is another railroad. The one that I was being reminded of here is the Cumbers and Toltec Scenic Railroad. Let's see, here we go. Which is all the way down in New Mexico, so totally not near Oregon. But for some reason, this railroad reminded me of the Cumbers and Toltec, which we can see right here. But this one's really cool. I want to go to this one day, because it's a lot like the it's a lot like the Durango and Silverton, but in New Mexico, and it's a part of the old Denver and Rio Grande kind of narrow gauge trackage. So it's a pretty cool thing. And they also have a galloping goose, which is like a bus on rails. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible and have made this thing a reality to this very day. But thank you for sharing Sumter, Oregon with us, because I never heard of it before, and now I'm interested in going there one day. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to 2 hot dog guys, 1 cup of snow, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And they said, the Mount Newman Railway line in Western Australia holds the record for the longest freight train in the world. And how long was the train? And guess before looking it up if you didn't know. And love Ukraine.
I think if I'm correct, it was 2.4 miles long. But let's go pull it up. The longest train in the world. That would be the one on Chris's mom, but for history purposes, it was 6,000. I was actually I was overestimating that. Wait a minute. Oh my God, it was 4.5 miles long. So it was the longest passenger train in the world was 6,270 feet long and operated by the Ration Railway in Switzerland. But the longest train in history was actually 4.5 miles long. and transported 82,000 metric tons of iron ore between the Yandi mine and Port Hedland in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, made up of 682 wagons. And it was powered by 8 General Electric AC 6000 CW diesel locomotives. That is a train. Like, my lord. This looks like it actually... Nah, that's an SD-70. That's not in Australia. But that is insane. A 4.5 mile long train. I remember hearing that fact a while ago. I forgot it until recently, and when you brought it up right now, and then it came back to me. But that is just insane. Imagine sitting at a railroad crossing, Matthew, waiting for that thing to pass. That would be like an hour waiting at the railway crossing.
That would be.
That would be terrible. But I thank you for the support and sharing that with us, because that is wild, I'll have to say. But still, I hope I was able to address that fairly well. And oh man, look at that. That's a BNSF coal train. You can actually see the end of that one. But that's probably about a good 3/4 of a mile long, possibly, with helpers at the back. But anyways, we are on to the next one. But big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to the Cat Lady, who puts in a $6 donation. And thank you very much, Cat Lady, for that $6 support. And they said, what if Iran gets attacked during the talks? Oh.
If Iran got attacked during the talks would probably fall apart, like I would assume, because what would they be talking about at that point? The nuclear research and development facilities would technically be destroyed, so there wouldn't be a purpose for talks anymore, because what would the U.S. be talking about? So I think the talks would collapse at that point if that happened. Very good question, though, and I thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Clank Clank, I'm a Tank, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Mr. Clank Clank, for that support. And he said, I would like to mention that Ironton, Ohio has the longest consecutive running Memorial Day parade in the country.
Really? That's actually pretty cool. And where was that in Iowa?
Let's see here. It is Ironton, Ohio.
Let's see. Ironton, Ohio. I'm not seeing it from here. Let me see if I can see it somewhere in here. Ironton, Ohio. It's not a big town, apparently. It's probably a little one. So let me... Ironton, Ohio. You know what? You know why I wasn't finding it? Because I was looking in Iowa, because my brain translated Ohio to Iowa. I'm not dyslexic, folks, but I might be. But here it is, right here. Ironton. Holy smokes, look at that rail yard. And it's CSX. That is a lot of coal cars. This is coal country. I forgot. But anyways, let's take a look at Ironton. Ironton looks like it might have had better times in a better day. But still, it is an interesting looking town. Let's drop down on Street View in this place and take a real gander at it. A downtown, perhaps. Ah, yes. I see you know Ohio well. Good one. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my Toro Loco? How dare you, sir? Take your hands off my out orders. Also, wait a minute, hang on. I just misread that in a weird way and then misunderstood it. But still, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that Ironton is an interesting place, and it's very interesting here that they have had the longest running Memorial Day parade in American history, or at least a continuously run one. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to HBO Matt, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, HBO Matt, for that support. They said Hearing Protection Act is in on the House side, and now we just need to get the Senate to leave it in. No more tax stamp or registration for silencers, and woot.
Really?
I don't know. Is that really true?
I don't know.
What's it called? The Hearing Protection Act.
I don't know. But that is it made it through the House. Did they say that?
It's in on the House side. I'm not sure if it's made it through.
That's interesting to hear. I think that probably gets shot down though. If it hasn't been voted through by the House, because I don't think they'd ever have a majority to actually make that happen. But who knows? Maybe they do. But still, I thank you for supporting and sharing that. That's really wild to hear, if true. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, let's see. Really quickly, I saw someone say something. I'll address here real quick because I saw George Tincher address it, and he's a channel legend, so I got to address this one here. Someone said, and I'm going to make this short. Richard Latif said, "I still can't get how you support a war with Iran, but hey, to each your own. Easy to call for war if you don't do any fighting yourself." So I'm going to go through this again. So, yeah, it's easy for me to call for a war because I actually have a spine and I know what we have to do. Second thing is that the folks who are in the military right now were not drafted. All of them are what's called volunteers, and they all joined the military on their own volition, and they all knew the risks involved. It's a part of their job to go overseas and shoot at people if the government needs them to. So if they have to go over there and they have to shoot at the Iranians because it's what we have to do because it's in our interest to protect our country, yes, I'm going to support that. It's a little bit goofy that every single time someone says something that you have to say, well, it's easy to say if you're not fighting the war, because it's very easy for me to say that the fire department ought to put out fires in houses, and by that same argument, it's easy because I'm not a firefighter having to put out the fires. But guess what? It's a firefighter's job to put out fires. They volunteered for the job. That's a part of the description. We're not running a welfare state around here in the military, folks. You don't just sit in the military on your ass and get a paycheck. You pretty much do that most of the time because we're in peacetime, but when something calls up and we have to go take care of business, that's their job. That's what they get paid for. Hate to tell you that it's inherent in their job that there's risks in being in the army, but that's kind of like saying there's water in the ocean, because that's a part of being in the military. So with that, I hope that addresses that well for you. And also, by the way, I would say that if we went to war with Iran and for some reason the President of the United States called me up and said, enforcer, we're going to go over and invade Iran because you said so, I would say, is there any way that I can get a special permission to go over there with everyone, just so that way I'm there because I backed it up and supported it? That's what I'd do. Because I think it is a little bit stupid to advocate for something and then not go over there, but that would be my take, so that's the best answer I can give. And also, Adventure Camping Stone said, "You were completely wrong, Enforcer. Not everyone joined the military to fire a gun." Well, they're in the wrong line of work, because if you become a firefighter and you're not willing to put out a burning house fire, you might not really want to be in the firefighting job. But most people in the military aren't in combatant roles, if you're saying it that way. And that's correct. Yeah, they still don't shoot at people even when they go overseas, because if you're a truck driver in the Army, you're a truck driver when you're deployed in the Army overseas. They don't give you a rifle and tell you to go up front and start shooting guys. And the Army lets you pick your MOS, so if you're in the infantry, you're in the infantry because you wanted to be there. So you pretty much volunteered to get shot at that point. And it's like, we can't sit there and say, oh, these guys who are these guys are getting paid, who voluntarily are there and agreed to be there, and they knew the inherent risks of getting in the infantry and that they could be shot at. We're going to stop. We're not going to go to war because some of them might get hurt. It's like, yes, that's a part of their job, is that they might get hurt. Like, that's a part of being in the military. It's not a safe job. It's a dangerous job. That's why they also get hazard pay. So with that, I hope that, and that's also why they get an amazing round of benefits as well. At least they're supposed to. So it's like there's a lot of things that we give those guys because their job is to get shot at the end of the day. So with that, I hope that addresses that well. But yes, I know that's a shock to many. A lot of the people who are always peace loving to the point that it's practically appeasement. But when a situation calls for it, the military has to go, and yes, people might get hurt, but they're there. They joined the military out of their own volition. If they got drafted, I have a different opinion. But they're all volunteers, so if they have to go, they have to go because it's in the country's interests. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Craig Savarese, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Craig, as well, for the $5 support. He said, North Korean news update. Today, we successfully launched our newest attack submarine. It gloriously slipped beneath the waves.
Yeah, that's the way the North Koreans will put it. Maybe they'll like, they're not the Iranians though. Heads are going to be rolling for this one. They're not going to try and rewrite the story later. But I do think for the support, that was a pretty good one. Actually, it took me a second to catch on, but that was a good one. I liked it. And so with that, Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, it wouldn't be possible. Now, Richard Lateef, I got to give you all the follow-up here. This is a good one. Still, Richard Lateef is now saying, because I'm saying that it would be beneficial for us to go deal with Iran if they're not willing to denuclearize, because it's in America's security interest to do so. Now they've moved on to the typical conspiracy theorist route. So now they're saying, sorry for not supporting our super corrupt military-industrial complex, which is already a red flag for a schizo. Government, globalist, and BlackRock and foreign country interest. So where in the world does their interest diverge from ours? Because to be honest with you, BlackRock probably doesn't want to get evaporated in nuclear hellfire, but in this one particular instance, I'd agree with them, because I also don't want to be vaporized in a nuclear hellfire, just to be honest with you here. So if this is in their interest, this is also in mine, because I don't want to get nuked, and the idea of a country like that having a nuke is something that I think I could find common ground with BlackRock on, and the military-industrial complex, and going over and dealing with them. Because it's not Iran is not going to precision strike BlackRock Investing Group with a nuclear weapon. They're going to hit New York City. And if you were in New York City, you're getting vaporized with BlackRock. So, you know, putting it that way, I would have to say, not really a big fan of that kind of a logic, because the nuclear bomb is going to kill us all. It's not just going to go for the military-industrial complex and the super corrupt little bad guys in BlackRock. It's killing everyone. So that's why I'm generally not for that. So I hope that addresses that well. Might not be something that you can comprehend well, because responding to my statement that these guys signed up for the risk, and then you immediately move the conversation into a completely different argument about everything's corrupt and I wouldn't fight for a corrupt regime or whatever, is showing me that you might not really be the best at winning an argument, because generally you stay on the same track. And now look at this. Now they're going to a totally different thing. They're losing on each front, and then they just keep changing the conversation each and every time. So this is going to be someone that unfortunately has to go, because there's no logic there, and that's a lost cause. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Murray Escott, who puts in the 5. And thank you, Murray, as well, for that $5 support, and also helping keep the channel running. And we also have a 5 from Christian. And Christian said, have you heard about the IDF warning shots to diplomats from approximately 25 countries in Jenin refugee camp?
I didn't really look into it too much, because there's a lot of additional details that may or may not be known. I didn't get a lot beyond just the shocker headline, and there's more details than shocker headlines to that kind of stuff. So I'd have to look into it. But still, I thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And big shout out to Andrew for the support as well. He said, democracies have continually produced the most motivated and successful military throughout history. And I'd like to hear the enforcer's thoughts about that.
I would have to agree. Democracies have done surprisingly well as far as ensuring governmental stability. And that sounds a little bit wild, because a lot of people are like, wow, there's a lot of civil unrest in America. How can that be? Interestingly enough, at least as far as the running track record goes, because a lot of democracies are also quite young, there hasn't been a lot of civil wars in most democracies. They seem to be fairly stable, at least compared to governments of old, such as monarchies, and also authoritarian dictatorships, where there can be bloody coups, civil wars, and so on. And so I would say that they generally do cultivate and foster a pretty strong military, because usually the militaries are not political apparatuses of pretty much oppression. They more so are actually a purebred fighting force for defensive measures. So they start to prioritize that, and they end up being very effective for that reason. So I'd have to agree. I think that democratic nations generally do produce some of the best fighting forces on the planet. I mean, the track record speaks for itself. The U.S. did great, along with all of the allies that were democratically aligned in World War I and World War II. We had minimal casualties, and we had amazing results, as compared to the Soviet Union, which had exorbitantly high casualties, but also had good results, but still insanely high casualties. And then in the post-war years from that point on, democracies time and time again have proven their worth. Like, for example, in the Gulf War against Saddam's armies of Iraq that were supposed to be some of the best in the world, and we wiped the floor against them quite easily. So I would have to agree. Democracies do produce some of the best militaries in global history. Like, hell, even the armies of the Roman Republic were very proficient for their time. And as the empire took over and it went from being a democracy to more of a monarchical system, we saw that the effectiveness of those armed forces started to wane over the centuries from then on. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Ben Birch, who puts in a 5 and says, thank you.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for enjoying it and wanting to help it to keep rolling. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 support from Steve. And Steve said, just a hard weather time for the USA and take a week to pick up, but they do quick.
And can you reread that one again?
I said, just a hard weather time for the USA. Take a week to pick up, but they do quick.
And thank you for the support. And it's a little bit rougher weather for the United States, but we'll make it through. We've always made it through as a country, and we'll continue to make it through because that's what we do. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Michael Thomas, who puts in a 5. And Michael said, I wonder how many anti-US cells we have here.
I would wonder, actually. That's a good question. I would assume a lot, because there are a lot of radicals out there. Like, there are far right and far left radical groups out there, and they get so radical they demand for the collapse of the system, which is a little bit ridiculous because the whole reason they were able to radicalize themselves was because of the benevolence of the system, which it's like if it allows you to be who you are, why in the world do you hate it? You know, like that's one thing I don't really get about these people who are radical like that. So I'd assume there's a decent amount of them actually, because what happened in Washington D.C. tonight, which is very unfortunate. Apparently, it was 2 embassy staff members of the Israeli embassy that apparently were shot and killed, unfortunately, by these gunmen. It's something that I believe it's I don't want to say it's just everywhere, but it's actually a lot more prolific than people would believe. It's just that a lot of these groups keep a low profile. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and I think it wants to give for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Cody Fritz, who puts in a 5. He said, it is the sound of the drills. And that said, what are y'all's favorite fish?
Favorite fish as far as eating or looking at? Like, because my favorite fish to eat would be catfish. Catfish is delicious. But as far as my favorite fish to look at, it's a good question actually. Haven't really looked at a lot of fish recently to really know. If I had to go with one that was just a good old classic crowd pleaser, it would be the betta fish. Which apparently spelled with 2 T's. I spelled it like a beta, like a chud. But beyond that, this is the betta fish. They look cool. They're really neat. These would be my favorite, at least in terms of their looks. They go everywhere looking like they got a giant dress on, which is a pretty cool thing for a fish. But also, the salmon are pretty neat. Not the ones that are in breeding season, but the ones that are just normal. These normal salmon, not the freak abominations when they go back to spawn. Like, these look like nuts, but these are pretty neat. Wait, this is actually a sockeye salmon. The sockeye salmon don't look like that all year, though. They start looking like that once they go upstream, and they look whack, so I don't really like them that much. But beyond that, the salmon are pretty neat looking, too. Or, you know what? This is a cool one. A swordfish. This is one I didn't think about. But these are pretty neat. They look fake.
Yeah, I like those.
Yeah, those are pretty neat. Like, those are actually really cool. I like those. And also flying fish. Flying fish are a cool fish, too. Because they actually fly. Like, well, they kind of glide, but that's flying for the large part. So they fly. I think they're cool, too. And I also saw one time this guy was filming on, like, a cargo ship at sea, and he was looking out into a storm, and one of these things popped out of the water and just beeline straight for his camera and hit him in the face. And he, like, dropped the camera, and he's like, ah! And I was like, oh my god! I was like, that thing hit him in the face! Like, so I always remember those for that reason. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses it well. Thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in a 5. And huge shout out to Darren for that support. He said, Rocket Man, the Sailor Man, Rocket the Sailor Man. He can do everything everyone else can except float his boat. Ho, 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 ha, ho, ha, ho.
E-I-E-I-O. But beyond that, thank you for the support. I gotta say, Little Rocket Man, he's having a tough time. They're gonna call him Little Boat Man now. But he throws all the buoyancy of a boat the way that that fat be coming down on it. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and hope this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wan108888, who puts in a 5. And they said, have you guys checked out the song The Silverton by C.W. McCall? Greatest country train song and added to our anthems.
I'd have to say I haven't heard that, but I'll have to try and look into it and take a little listen to it. And so with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 3. And huge shout to Plazoth as well for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support, Plazoth, because if it wasn't for folks like you, where would we be? Where would we be? And so a big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Andrew Honeycutt. And he said, best star in info stream, and I'll never stop saying it.
Hey, and I thank you for not stopping saying it. We love to hear it. The kind words are greatly appreciated. And I gotta thank you so much once again for always saying kind things about the channel and always being here and watching it and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. So a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. He said, LSA hit the like button. That's an order.
And that is an order, folks. You gotta hit the like buttons. Them's the rules. I don't make them. I just enforce them. That's why I'm called the Enforcer. But still, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. LSA Sergeant Figment, because you're here every night, and we greatly appreciate your continuous support to the channel. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 2 from Steve, who said, thanks to the LSA and all.
Hey, and a big thanks to you, and a big thanks to the LSA. We love the LSA. We love the LSA. It's a great community, the greatest on the internet, truly the finest. And I gotta thank you for enjoying it and supporting it and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, big thanks to you once again. And also, Matthew, I like how that one person said, love your channel, but I don't listen to stupid shit. I want the news. And then you're like, the news is over. And then like 2 minutes later, you're like, wait a minute, I don't like that. And he just banned him. I was like, okay. I was like, man, honestly, I was thinking that would be coming around the first time. Because I just don't know, folks, how people don't get it. We have like 5 people who don't get it every night. But there's this cool thing on the stream called a rewind button. And if you miss the news, you just rewind to the news. Like we don't have to stop everything we're doing on air to get back to the news for you live. Like, we're running a show for thousands of people here. You can just rewind, and that makes it a lot easier for me because I'm not having to recap an hour and a half of news just for one person. And that also makes it a lot easier for you because you're able to fast forward and rewind as much as you need to hear the news how you want to. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Siri, who puts in a 2 and says 4 at CME4PC. And thank you, Enforcer Bros.
Hey, and I thank you for the support, Siri. And of course, CME4PC will never be forgotten by the old guards and the channel legends. Well, really the old guards. But still, a big thanks to you once again. And of course, it was an unfortunate thing that CME4PC passed away that a while ago. But still, a big thanks to you once again. And with that, also, folks, I gotta say, I'm having to speed it up a little bit because Matthew ain't feeling that well because of the whole root canal thing. And considering that I don't have any way to get a spreadsheet at this point from him, I don't think I'm gonna have to speed this up a little bit so that way we can make sure to keep everything running well tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Right Geek Project, who puts in a 2, excuse me. And they said, what are the U.S. equivalent of BrahMos 1 and 2?
Unfortunately, I would not know at the moment, so I'd have to declare ignorance. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 2 from Stephen Mosher, who said SpaceX engine on the new ICBM.
I wouldn't trust it. Like, at least for now, it's kind of an unproven engine, and they're still trying to work out the kinks. So I wouldn't put it on a new ICBM. I would largely try and use something that's more tried and tested from NASA, most likely, or from Boeing. But still, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Jeremy Vahill, who put in a 2, along with Murray Escott, who also put in a 1, and Mark-Andre Burnett, who put in a 1 as well. And thank you very much, Jeremy, Murray, and Mark, for supporting the channel and also helping to keep it running. And we do appreciate that. of course. And with that, folks, that actually rounds out all of our super chat questions for the night. So it is now time to jump right into our live chat questions proper and our Morse code decoders. So tonight we had literally the entire roster as always: Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps, Heroic Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse reads: North Korea looking like a fool with the new destroyer capsizing instantly, LMAO even, and LLT, LSA.
And ding! That's the sound of money. You all got that under the nail. That was the Morse code tonight. I'd like to congratulate the Least Spring Army Signal Corps for continuing to do that right every single night. We are absolutely impressed with y'all's Morse code deciphering abilities, and I gotta say that we are grateful once again, to have the Morse code as a message from each and every single one of y'all. And so for that reason, we're going to be moving on to the live chat question segment proper. But before we get into that, I do have to mention that because of Matthew's debilitating illness from the root canal earlier today, we will have to unfortunately only grab a limited number of live chat questions. So we are going to be grabbing not 3, but 4. But then we're going to be rounding out the stream right after that. And so with that, Matthew, take it away. What is our fourth and final question of the night?
So this one goes to Knox Date, who said, in your guys' opinion, when will the attack on Iran's nuclear sites happen by Israel?
It's really tough to call that kind of stuff, unfortunately. Like, I would love to give you a good time frame, but whenever we say, oh, it's inevitable, it's happening in a couple of days or a week, it'll be like 3 weeks after that, and then it happens. So I would have to say within the month, maybe within the next 2 months. But that is a very broad kind of a window, and I really can't get more exact than that because it would definitely be wrong. And so I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least with the knowledge I have at the moment. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Joe Emily, who said, I think we successfully sunk our first North Korean ship without doing anything, and does he launch a missile now to change the narrative?
He's probably going to launch a missile into the Sea of Japan to kind of cover it up. But yeah, we technically got one through indirect action, I guess. I guess we could call it sabotage, maybe, and take credit for it.
And they just fired them. North Korea just fired a couple of cruise missiles toward the East Sea 30 minutes ago.
No way, really?
For real.
Dude, I didn't even know. Dude, y'all gonna say the analysis is spot on because I didn't even know that. I just said it, and then Matthew confirmed that it actually has already happened. So, well, you know, like, they're predictable as a book. You can read them like a book over there in North Korea. You know exactly what's happening next. But, anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can because that's exactly what they're going to do in response to the destroyer sinking, is that they fired off a couple of missiles. They already did, apparently. But with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. We are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, has there been any official response from South Korea regarding the sinking of the North Korean ship?
Not yet. It's been such a recent event that I don't think the South Korean Foreign Ministry has really been able to have time to respond to it or make an official statement. So at the moment, no. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person? Let me do that over again. Who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is David Tablet, who said, did you see that Russia is introducing a new nuclear-tipped air-to-air missile, most likely a version of the Russian R-37M?
I did hear about that. I didn't include it in the news today because I was like, wow, they need to get a life. Like, that's so obsolete. Like those kinds of missiles were brought into being in the 50s and 60s when guidance technology was in its infancy and they weren't that accurate. So you had to have a nuclear tipped warhead to be able to do damage to large bomber formations. But nowadays, that kind of a missile would be practically obsolete. There really is no purpose or use for the thing. And it also would cause a lot of collateral damage, especially if it was targeting a low flying missile to the ground. Which is in most scenarios what it would be doing. So yes, I did hear about it, but I didn't cover it because that is such an obsolescent form of technology. It really isn't even worth talking about too much, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And I gotta say, folks, everyone give a round of applause to Enforcer Matt for making it through tonight, because I'm actually shocked he was here with us the whole night, considering that he had root canal. I was assuming that would be pretty exhausting, but somehow he pulled through the whole night. But beyond, hey, he sounds exhausted. Like, listen, he's like, oh. Like, dude, you sound like Peter Griffin when he like got his head crushed by the two logs, and then after that, it cut to him with the hat on. He said, at least I got my hat. Like, remember, that's you right now, man. But I gotta respect that. Matthew is on that business tonight, folks, and I gotta say, give him a round of applause, folks. It really is something respectable. But beyond that, it is time for us to round out tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all and Enforcer Matt for being here with me throughout the entirety of the stream tonight. We had a peak viewership tonight of 11.4 thousand people, and over the course of the entire stream, We have had 92,000 people watch this stream from beginning to end. We are entirely honored and appreciative, both Matthew and me, to have all of you all here with us tonight, and we hope that you all enjoyed this greatly. We will, of course, see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm not really sure if Matthew's going to be the one making the short war video. He might want to take it easy, considering he had a root canal. If not, y'all will see him tomorrow. If he doesn't feel good enough, y'all will see me on the short war video tomorrow, and you will also see both of us on tomorrow's stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Time once again. And so will that. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. The Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again. And we will see tomorrow on the midday video as well, and the show, and also the stream as well tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And once again, thank you all for joining us once more. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Army strong.